There is a moment far in the north when the darkness feels complete. And then, without sound, a soft green shimmer rises like a breath at the edge of the world. The sky brightens as though someone stirred a brush of light across the horizon, and the quiet night begins to glow with colours that seem too gentle to be real. Welcome to AstraFlow. Here, science drifts like starlight, and curiosity becomes calm. Tonight, let your thoughts slow down, your breathing find its rhythm, and your mind float through wonder. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you lying in bed under city lights, or watching the stars from somewhere quiet? Tell me in the comments. It's always peaceful to imagine the AstraFlow community scattered across the world, drifting together through the same sky. And if this calm journey brings you peace, you can gently support AstraFlow by liking this video or subscribing. It helps this little corner of the cosmos keep glowing. Now, let's begin tonight's voyage into the quiet story of peaceful facts about the Northern Lights for deep sleep. The Northern Lights, or the aurora borealis, have always felt like a dream made visible. They appear slowly, like the faint memory of colour returning to a monochrome world, and then they move, not fast, not loud, but in slow drifting curtains that ripple the way breath moves through resting lungs. When you see them for the first time, the world around you seems to fall silent, as though your thoughts themselves pause to witness something ancient. This soft glow has touched the lives of travellers, wanderers, scientists, storytellers, and dreamers for thousands of years. And tonight, they will touch yours as well. As you rest, we'll explore why the sky glows, how the colours flow like liquid air, and why this gentle dance happens mostly at the cold edges of the earth. We'll drift through stories, float through atmospheric layers, and wander slowly through the northern night where every shimmer carries the memory of sunlight that travelled millions of kilometres just to become this moment of calm above your head. Allow yourself to settle, feel your breath ease into a slower rhythm. Let your shoulders soften, your thoughts loosen their edges, and let the quiet colours of this story settle around you like the first whisper of green across a winter horizon. Tonight, the stars are steady, the air is still, and somewhere above the poles, delicate arcs of light are beginning their silent journey. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to solve. Just drift with me, gently, as we follow these peaceful lights into the wide, calm north. What does it mean for the sky to move? Not the passing of clouds or the drifting of stars, but the sky itself. Glowing, bending, swirling in colours that pulse like a heartbeat. This simple question sits quietly at the centre of the Northern Lights. Why does the heavens above us dance? It's a question that feels both scientific and deeply human, because even after we learn the physics behind it, the wonder remains untouched. When we watch the aurora stretch across the night, its long curtains lifting and folding like silk in an invisible breeze, we feel something stir inside us. The mind slows, the breath deepens. The world becomes larger and quieter at the same time. The question stays, why does light move like a living thing? To wonder about the Northern Lights is to step into a space where science and imagination blend gently together. You might picture the sky as a vast canvas, brushed by colours carried from the sun, or as a soft veil of energy, rippling because of forces too delicate for our senses. Or perhaps you imagine the earth breathing, inhaling the wind from space, exhaling the light we see from the ground. This dance is not only a physical process, it's also a reminder that the universe is not still. Even in the deepest night, in the quietest places, something is always flowing. And maybe that's why humans have looked up at the aurora with the same mix of awe and comfort for thousands of years. When the sky dances, something in us feels recognized, as if the universe is whispering back in a language made of motion and color. The lights stretch, bend, fade, return, They drift like thoughts. They shimmer like distant memories. They move the way calm feelings move through a resting mind. So, we begin here, with a question that does not need a simple answer. Why does the sky dance? Why do the lights flow instead of staying still? Why do they appear not everywhere, but only in the far north, where silence is thick and the cold is clear? Tonight, we will wander through these questions gently. We will explore the forces that shape the aurora, the particles that travel from the sun to our world, the magnetic fields that guide them, and the colours that bloom because of that meeting. But beneath all the explanations, this question will remain like a soft thread connecting every part of the journey. Because the northern lights are not only a phenomenon, they are a feeling, a reminder of movement in stillness, a reminder that even when life feels quiet, there is always something glowing slowly in the background. As you rest and listen, let this question settle lightly in your mind, not as a puzzle to solve, but as a doorway to wonder. Why does the sky dance? Perhaps by the end of the night you'll feel that the answer is partly scientific and partly a reflection of something peaceful within you. And for now, that's enough. Just breathe, drift, and allow curiosity to stay soft and calm. To understand the gentle glow of the northern lights, we begin with a quiet truth. The aurora is a conversation, a soft, ongoing exchange between the sun and the earth. Two celestial companions connected across millions of kilometers of silent space. It is easy to imagine them as separate worlds, drifting alone through darkness, but the aurora reminds us that they are always touching, always influencing one another, even in ways we cannot see. Every shimmer, every curtain of green or violet begins with a subtle whisper from the sun. The sun is not the still golden disk we see from afar. It is alive with motion, boiling, swirling, stretching magnetic fields and releasing small streams of energy. Much of this activity is calm and steady, like a slow breath, and it forms a gentle outward flow, known as the solar wind. These particles, though tiny, carry the sun's energy across the solar system. Day after day, they drift outward until some of them reach our planet. Most pass by without notice, but some brush against the invisible boundary surrounding Earth, a magnetic shield that wraps around our world like a soft protective shell. This shield, the magnetosphere, is one of Earth's most quiet yet essential features. Though we cannot see it, it is constantly deflecting and guiding the particles that arrive from space. When the solar wind meets this field, the interaction is delicate, almost like the fingers of two dancers touching before a movement begins. The particles are steered toward the polar regions, following lines of magnetic force that curve gracefully from one end of the planet to the other. And there, near the cold edges of the world, the true glow begins. Imagine the upper atmosphere, thin, fragile, and incredibly high above the ground. When particles from the sun finally reach this region, they gently collide with the atoms of oxygen and nitrogen that live in the sky. These tiny encounters don't make a sound, but they create light. It's a simple process, yet it feels like magic. Energy transferred, colours released, the sky illuminated in ripples and arcs that seem to move with intention. Green, the most familiar colour, blooms around 100 kilometres up. Red waits higher, violet traces the edges, and all of it together becomes the silent choreography we call the Northern Lights. What makes this overview peaceful is the scale of it. The idea that something so vast and complex produces something so quiet and soothing. The sun breathes out, the earth responds, magnetic lines guide the flow like gentle pathways, atoms glow calmly. And from the ground, we watch a luminous veil drift above us, unaware of the intricate physics behind its beauty. The science is real, but the experience feels like emotion. It feels like connection. As you listen, let this simple relationship settle into your mind. The aurora exists because the universe is always interacting, always exchanging, always flowing. And just like the lights trace the pathways of Earth's magnetic field, our thoughts follow their own quiet currents as we rest. Tonight, our journey will move deeper into this soft dance of colour and sky, fact by fact, glow by glow. For now, breathe gently and imagine the Earth and Sun continuing their endless conversation, calm, steady, and filled with quiet light. To follow the first peaceful fact of the Northern Lights, we drift now toward the source, the solar wind. Despite its name, it isn't a wind in the way we know it. There is no breeze, no movement of air, no whisper against the skin. It is something far softer, far more delicate. A silent stream of tiny particles drifting outward from the sun in every direction. If you imagine the sun breathing slowly and endlessly, the solar wind is the breath. Not forced, not rushed, but a quiet exhalation that fills the vastness between planets. The sun produces this flow because it is never truly still. Its surface is a restless ocean of plasma, churning and folding in patterns that last minutes or centuries. Magnetic fields twist and rise, creating arcs so large they could wrap around planets. From these motions, small fragments of energy and particles escape, drifting into space as though released from a cosmic tide. Most of the time, this solar wind is calm and consistent, gentle enough that Earth moves through it like a stone resting in a slow-moving stream. What makes this wind so interesting and so vital to the aurora is that it continues even when we do not notice it. Day after day it flows past Earth. Most of the particles slip quietly around the planet, guided aside by the magnetosphere. But some encounter the magnetic boundary just right, slipping into the field and beginning their long, spiralling descent toward the poles. This journey takes time. It is not a sudden event. It is more like watching a leaf follow the currents of a river, drifting downward until it finds a place to settle. If you could watch the solar wind approaching Earth, you wouldn't see a storm or a beam or anything intense. You would see a faint, subtle haze of particles, stretching across space like dust illuminated by a faraway lantern. The wind itself is gentle, so gentle that many space probes glide through it, almost unaffected. But when those particles finally meet Earth's magnetic pathways, a transformation begins. They speed up, guided by invisible lines toward the highest parts of our atmosphere. There is something soothing in imagining this process at a very slow pace. Picture the particles drifting for days across the darkness, passing planets, moons, and empty space. There is no sound, no urgency, only motion and patience. And then, when they finally touch Earth's magnetic field, they follow it like travellers finding a familiar road, downward, downward, toward the north and south where the sky is ready to receive them. This is the first soft truth of the aurora. The Northern Lights begin not with chaos but with calm, a gentle solar breath, a patient journey, a meeting with Earth's magnetic shield, and eventually the birth of colour. The process is delicate, like ink slowly spreading through water, guided by currents we cannot see. As you rest, let this image settle into your thoughts. Sunlight, broken into tiny pieces, drifting for millions of kilometres just to create a quiet glow in the night sky. It reminds us that beauty often comes from far away, shaped by forces we never feel directly. And yet, when it arrives, it becomes something comforting and close, something we experience not with our minds first, but with wonder. Tonight, as we continue through these peaceful facts, remember this slow solar wind moving silently through space. It is the beginning of every aurora you will hear about, a soft cosmic exhale that travels all the way to you. To understand why the Northern Lights gather at the edges of the world, we drift now towards something we cannot see but rely on every second, Earth's magnetic field. It wraps around our planet like a quiet guardian, always present, always watching, always guiding the invisible currents of space. You and I never feel it directly. Birds sense it. Compasses follow it. But to us it remains a silent protector, one that shapes the aurora with a gentle, patient hand. The magnetic field begins deep within the earth, in a place no human has ever reached. Far below the crust, past layers of rock and mantle, lies the outer core, a swirling ocean of molten iron and nickel. These metals move slowly, creating electrical currents that, in turn, generate a magnetic field reaching far into space. It is a remarkable thought. The quiet lights that shimmer above polar skies begin with the slow, deep heartbeat of Earth's inner core. From above, this magnetic field forms an elegant shape called the magnetosphere. If you could see it, it would resemble a shimmering bubble, elongated on one side by the constant push of the solar wind. It stretches tens of thousands of kilometers outward, shielding Earth from most of the sun's energetic particles. Without it, life on the surface would be very different. Too exposed, too unprotected, too vulnerable. But because of this guardian bubble, most of the solar wind slides around the planet like a river flowing around a stone. Yet the boundary is not absolute. At certain places, especially near the poles, the magnetic field lines bend inward, guiding particles downward like threads leading to a focal point. These lines form large arcs sweeping from one pole to the other, and the solar particles slip along them with surprising grace. It's almost like the Earth is gently directing them, showing them exactly where to go. If you imagine these magnetic lines glowing faintly, they would look like ribbons stretching through the sky, invisible roads for the solar wind to follow. When the particles begin to travel along these paths, they accelerate, spiraling downward through the atmosphere with quiet purpose. They are not chaotic or violent. They move the way water flows down a narrow stream, following the curves and contours of the land beneath it. And this is why the aurora appears where it does. The magnetic field acts like a cosmic guide, bringing particles toward the poles, concentrating them into oval-shaped zones that encircle the Arctic and Antarctic. These aurora ovals are always there, even when we cannot see them, rings of invisible potential waiting for the right moment to bloom into colour. There is something soothing in recognizing the care with which our planet manages these energies. The magnetosphere deflects, slows, reshapes, and redirects the solar wind with the same steady calm it has held for billions of years. It turns a potentially harmful stream of particles into one of the most peaceful sights on Earth. What could have been chaos becomes beauty. What could have been danger becomes a dance of shifting light. As you listen, let this idea settle gently in your thoughts. Earth protects us in ways we rarely notice, using forces we rarely feel, guiding the universe's energy with a quiet strength. The northern lights are not just a display of colour, they are a reminder of the balance between our world and the space around it. A soft, radiant signature of the guardian field that holds us safe. The northern lights do not appear everywhere. They have chosen their home in the far edges of the world, in places where winter nights stretch long and silence has a way of settling gently over the land. There is a reason for this, a soft scientific truth that unfolds like a map drawn in light. The aurora lives near the poles because that is where Earth's magnetic lines descend, guiding the solar particles into graceful paths that lead them toward the Arctic and Antarctic circles. If the solar wind is the breath of the sun, and the magnetosphere is the guardian, then the polar regions are the stage where their quiet meeting becomes visible. When particles from the sun spiral down along these magnetic lines, they don't scatter evenly across the planet. Instead, they focus into elongated rings surrounding the poles, the auroral ovals. These ovals shift and pulse, expanding during solar storms and shrinking during calmer days. But they always hover in roughly the same regions, the high latitudes where the nights are clearer, the air thinner, and human presence sparse. It's as if the sky prefers to reveal its secrets where the world is already quiet. What makes the polar region so perfect for this luminous dance is not just the magnetic connection, but also the natural darkness. In the far north, the sun dips below the horizon for long stretches of winter, leaving the sky open and unbroken. Here, the faintest glow becomes visible. A small shimmer that would disappear under a city's brightness becomes a gentle curtain of colour that stretches across a frozen lake or ripples over a silent forest. The Arctic acts like a darkened theatre, and the aurora performs its movements with serene clarity. If you imagine the path of these solar particles from space down to Earth, it resembles a soft spiral staircase, guiding them to the top of the world. They follow this descent without hurry, drifting downward until they meet the thin air of the upper atmosphere. And once they arrive, the first hints of colour begin to appear. A faint line on the horizon, a softening of the sky, a quiet green breathing into existence. The journey is long, but the arrival feels gentle, almost shy. There's something poetic about how the aurora chooses such remote places to reveal itself. Perhaps it's a reminder that some beauty requires distance, stillness, and darkness to unfold. The far north teaches us that not everything is meant to be seen everywhere. Some wonders belong to landscapes shaped by frost, wind, and long nights. And those who travel there, or live there, carry with them a unique memory, seeing the world lit not by the sun but by the planet's own delicate glow. As you rest, imagine standing in one of those quiet polar places, snow beneath your feet, a wide open sky above, the air cold enough to sharpen your awareness, yet calm enough that nothing moves except the slow breath of light overhead. In that moment you would feel both small and deeply connected, a visitor in a land where the sky speaks softly, but clearly. The northern lights gather at the poles not by accident, but by design woven into the very structure of our planet. They follow the pathways Earth provides, arriving exactly where the magnetic field welcomes them. In this way, the aurora is both a scientific phenomenon and a reminder of the Earth's gentle guidance, a luminous flow that settles into the quietest corners of the world. When the northern lights appear, the first thing most people notice is the colour, a soft green rising like mist, a hint of purple at the edges, a rare crimson glow spreading like a quiet flame across the upper sky. These colours are not random, nor painted by imagination. They are the signatures of the sky itself, gentle whispers from the atoms that fill the atmosphere, each releasing light in its own subtle voice. And in their blending, the aurora becomes a slow-moving tapestry that feels both ethereal and deeply familiar. Green is the colour most associated with the northern lights, and it is no coincidence. Oxygen atoms, floating about 100 to 150 kilometres above the Earth, glow green when touched by energetic particles from the sun. This altitude is where the atmosphere is just thin enough to let the collisions happen delicately, producing that iconic soft hue. If you picture a curtain of green falling from the sky, or a gentle wave of light rolling across the night, you're seeing the calm breath of oxygen illuminated in motion. But green is only one part of the aurora's palette. Higher up, much higher than most people imagine, oxygen can glow a deep, rare red. This crimson colour emerges at altitudes above 200 kilometres, where the air is so thin that each glowing atom remains bright for a long, slow moment. Red auroras drift quietly, often too faint to notice, but when they appear, they spread like a soft veil, a reminder that the upper atmosphere has its own quiet language. These red lights appear less frequently because the conditions must be just right, but when they arrive, they feel like the sky has opened a hidden chamber of colour. Then there is violet, a gentle edge often seen outlining brighter greens. This hue comes from nitrogen, the quiet companion of Earth's atmosphere. Nitrogen produces purples, blues, and deeper violets, depending on how high the interaction occurs. These colours shimmer more quickly than others, flickering like distant reflections on water. When nitrogen glows, it smooths the edges of the aurora, giving each ribbon of light a soft, ethereal border that feels almost hand-painted. Together these colours move not as separate streaks but as one flowing composition. The aurora has no sharp lines. Everything blends, merges, fades, and returns. A green curtain may ripple outward, a violet fringe may trace its edges, and a pale red may hover above like a breath that refuses to fade. Watching this play of colour is like observing emotion transform into light, shifting gently, unpredictably, yet always with a calm rhythm that echoes the slow movement of the sky. The science is simple. Different atoms, touched at different altitudes, release different wavelengths of light. But what we experience is something much softer. We see the atmosphere reveal itself. We see the sky breathe colour. We see sunlight, broken into pieces and carried across space, returned to us as a luminous whisper. As you rest, imagine the colours unfolding above you, a faint ripple becoming a wave becoming a curtain lifting its edges into purple, a red glow appearing at the top like the memory of a sunset stretched thin. Let the colours drift through your mind the way they drift through polar skies, slowly, quietly, endlessly. The northern lights are a reminder that light itself has moods. Not all illumination is bright or sharp. Some glows are gentle, patient, and soft enough to lull the world into stillness. If the aurora had a heartbeat, it would glow green. This soft, familiar colour is the one most often seen flowing across northern skies, and for many people it is the defining shade of the northern lights. There is something especially calming about this green. It is neither sharp nor bright, neither cold nor warm. It floats gently, like quiet breath, filling the horizon with a glow that seems to rise from the earth itself. But the truth is even more beautiful. The green light comes from oxygen atoms high above us, touched by energy that has travelled across nearly 150 million kilometres. To picture this, imagine a single oxygen atom sitting quietly in the upper atmosphere. It is drifting in thin air at altitudes where the sky is almost space. When a charged particle from the sun arrives, guided by Earth's magnetic field, it transfers some of its energy to the atom. The oxygen absorbs the energy, holding it briefly, almost like a gentle inhale. Then, when the atom releases that energy again, it lets it go as light. A soft, emerald-coloured photon. And when millions of atoms release that same green glow at once, the night sky transforms into a luminous ocean of colour. This green glow appears most often between 100 and 150 kilometres above the ground, a region where the air is still thin enough for the light to shine clearly, but dense enough for these quiet collisions to happen frequently. It is a perfect balance, a sweet spot in the sky where science and beauty meet. The lights drift and ripple not because the oxygen moves quickly, but because the energy flows along invisible magnetic lines. Every shift in the aurora reflects some subtle change in the way particles enter the atmosphere. The result is a movement that feels alive, as though the sky itself is breathing slowly. There is something soothing about knowing that this green glow, which looks so gentle from below, begins with a journey so vast. The sunlight that powers the aurora left the sun days earlier, travelling through space with no destination in mind. It wandered through darkness, past planets and dust, until Earth's magnetic field gathered it and guided it downward. Only then, after travelling millions of kilometres, did it finally become a soft green whisper across the sky. What began as distant energy becomes something peaceful, almost intimate, a quiet gift from the cosmos. People who stand beneath this green heart of the aurora often describe a sense of calm that is difficult to explain. The colour feels natural, almost grounding. It washes across snowy landscapes like a gentle tide, illuminating frozen lakes and silent forests with an otherworldly softness. Even though we understand the physics behind it, the experience feels emotional, as if the earth is glowing softly to remind us of its connection to the sun and of our connection to both. Tonight, as you listen, you can imagine this green glow rising slowly above a dark horizon, not rushing, not flashing, but unfolding with patient grace. The first faint stroke appears, then brightens, then stretches into a curtain that drifts like a slow, calming wave. You can picture yourself watching it from a quiet place, wrapped in a warm coat, breath visible in the air, the world hushed around you, and above, the green light flowing gently like the rhythm of deep, steady breathing. This is the heart of the aurora, oxygen glowing softly, painting the sky with a colour that feels alive. Let that image rest in your mind for a moment, steady and serene. The universe has many voices, but few are as peaceful as this one. While green may be the aurora's heartbeat, violet is its quiet sigh, the soft edge of colour that frames the brighter glow, subtle enough to miss unless you look closely. These gentle purples and blues are created by nitrogen, a gas that fills much of our atmosphere, yet usually remains invisible to us. Under the touch of solar particles, nitrogen reveals a hidden tenderness, painting the edges of the aurora with hues that feel like twilight folded into light. If green expresses calm movement, then violet expresses the softness that surrounds it. Violet auroras often appear at the lower boundaries of the lights, about 80 to 100 kilometers above the ground. Here, the air is thicker than the lofty region where green shines. The collisions between particles and nitrogen are quicker, flickering, almost restless. But from below, these interactions blend into something soothing, a delicate outline that gives the aurora its texture. Where green feels smooth, violet feels feathered. Where green stretches deep, violet curls lightly at the edges. It's the difference between a wave and the foam that brushes its crest. Nitrogen glows in several colours, but the most recognizable auroral shade is a soft violet blue. It often appears as a thin border beneath the brighter green, or as a faint haze following the movement of a ribbon of light. Sometimes, during active displays, vibrant purple streaks may shoot upward, as if the aurora is reaching out with fingertips of light. But even in these moments, the colour never feels harsh. It always carries a gentle coolness, a reminder of the cold, clear air through which it shines. The beauty of violet auroras lies not only in their colour but also in their transience. They flicker, shift, and change faster than the other hues, fading almost as soon as they appear. Watching them is like observing a memory forming and dissolving at the same time. There is a feeling of softness, of impermanence, of light that arrives lightly and leaves even lighter. In a way they mirror human thoughts, appearing, drifting, fading, leaving behind a quiet afterglow. From a distance, especially in photographs, violet auroras may look more dramatic than they appear to the eye. Cameras capture more of the deeper purples, the richer blues, the fuller spectrum that our eyes struggle to see in the dark. But when you stand beneath them in person, the effect is gentler, more of a whisper than a declaration. A subtle border glowing at the horizon, framing the green in a soft breath of colour that feels almost like a secret between you and the sky. As you imagine the violet lights tonight, let them appear not as bold streaks, but as gentle traces following the larger auroral shapes. Picture a long sweeping curtain of green drifting overhead, and then, along its lower edges, a faint purple shimmer begins to outline it. Delicate, understated, like a quiet echo of the main dance. The violet flickers softly, smoothing the edges of the glow, giving the light a sense of dimension, of softness, of life. This subtle interplay of green and violet is part of what makes the northern lights feel so alive. The sky isn't simply illuminated, It's layered, textured, breathing with shifting colours that blend and unblend in an endless rhythm. Nitrogen's violet whisper may be quiet, but it adds depth to the aurora's glow, turning a simple light into a luminous tapestry. As you rest, hold that image gently in your mind. The horizon glowing with a thin, soft ribbon of violet, framing the night with colour that arrives like a sigh and fades like a dream. When people describe the northern lights, they rarely speak only of the colours. They speak of shapes, flowing forms that seem to rise and fall as if the sky were made of fabric, curtains that sway in a silent breeze, long ribbons stretching across the horizon, waves that roll overhead with the softness of slow-moving water. These shapes are not illusions, nor tricks of the eye. They are the visible footprints of invisible forces, the way Earth's magnetic field and the incoming solar particles sculpt light into motion. And each shape tells its own quiet story. The curtain is perhaps the most iconic, thin, luminous sheets hanging from the sky like draped silk. These curtains ripple because the magnetic field lines guiding the particles are arranged in long, descending arcs. As the particles follow them, they create vertical columns of light that appear as folds, soft, sinuous, endlessly shifting. When you watch an auroral curtain move, it feels like something both delicate and vast, as if an enormous hand were brushing lightly against the fabric of the night. Then there are the ribbons, long, narrow streaks of light that stretch across the sky like glowing pathways. Ribbons often appear when the aurora intensifies, when the incoming particles flow in stronger, more focused streams. These strands can twist gently, curling like smoke, or divide into multiple threads that braid and unbraid themselves in complete silence. As they drift, they create the impression of direction, of flow, as though the sky is tracing the path of a cosmic river. Waves are the aurora at its most fluid. They roll across the heavens with slow, rhythmic motion, expanding and contracting in patterns that resemble breathing. These waves form when particle density fluctuates along the magnetic field lines, causing the brightness to pulse gently. Watching auroral waves is like watching the ocean reflect the moon. Calm, hypnotic, endlessly soothing. They rise, they fade, they return, always unhurried. What makes these shapes so calming is the absence of harshness. There are no straight edges, no sudden angles. Everything curves, everything flows, everything appears to move with a softness that mirrors the natural rhythms of rest. The aurora never snaps or jolts. Even when the lights flicker, the motion feels organic, as if the sky is simply following its own slow heartbeat. If you imagine yourself standing beneath this shifting architecture of light, you might feel a kind of quiet awe settle into your chest. The world feels bigger, yet gentler. The night feels alive, yet peaceful. Curtains glide overhead, brushing the tops of mountains. Ribbons stretch across frozen lakes like wandering streams of colour. Waves wash across the sky in slow, luminous breaths. And in that moment, the boundary between earth and sky feels thinner, softer, almost dissolving. Scientists can explain these shapes precisely, how the alignment of magnetic field lines, the density of particles, and the altitude of collisions create each form. But understanding the mechanics does little to diminish the experience. Instead, the explanation adds a kind of beauty. Knowing that these drifting shapes are the result of the universe's invisible architecture makes the dance feel even more miraculous. As you rest, let these forms drift through your imagination. See the curtains sway gently. Watch the ribbons stretch and twist. Feel the waves roll overhead like a slow tide of light. Let the shapes flow through you the way they flow through the northern sky, calm, fluid, deeply serene. One of the quietest questions ever asked about the northern lights is also one of the most mysterious. Do they make a sound? When people stand beneath the aurora, wrapped in thick winter coats, breath rising in faint clouds. The sky above them seems so alive that sound feels almost possible. A ripple of green sweeps across the darkness. A curtain folds in on itself. A wave rolls from horizon to horizon. Everything about the motion suggests a whisper, a faint crackle, a distant hum, but the air remains still, the snow remains silent, and for most of history, no one knew for certain whether the aurora carried a voice of its own. Scientifically, the answer should be no. The lights form more than 100 kilometers above the ground, far too high for sound waves to reach us quickly or clearly. The upper atmosphere is so thin that sound barely exists there at all. The collisions that create the glow are gentle, microscopic, too small to produce anything resembling a noise. If you were standing right beneath the shimmering arcs, physics would tell you that the silence should be complete, perfect, unbroken, and yet, some people have claimed to hear them. For centuries, stories from northern cultures described faint crackling sounds, like snow crunching underfoot, or the snapping of distant branches, or the soft rustle of fabric. These accounts were often dismissed as imagination, amplified by the awe of being surrounded by such beauty. But in recent years, a few scientists have begun to wonder if these whispers might hold a fragment of truth after all. There is a theory, still delicate and not fully understood, that the aurora may create subtle electrical disturbances near the ground. These disturbances might cause small crackling sounds when conditions are perfect. Extremely cold air, still nights, and a particularly strong auroral display. If this is true, the sounds would not come directly from the lights themselves, but from the atmosphere responding to the electric field changes above, like a faint echo of the sky's energy, transformed into a whisper we can just barely hear. It is also possible that the mind, overwhelmed by the beauty, fills the silence with imagined sound. When you watch something so fluid and alive, your senses expect motion to come with a voice. A ripple should rustle, a wave should hum, a falling curtain should sigh as it settles. The silence is so deep that the brain sometimes paints its own accompaniment, creating the illusion of sound where none exists. And in a way, that is its own kind of truth. The aurora becomes so vivid that even your imagination participates. Whether the aurora has a real voice or not, the experience of standing beneath it feels like listening. The stillness becomes part of the moment. You find yourself holding your breath, leaning into the quiet, waiting for a sound that may never come. And in that waiting, in that soft attention, the silence becomes meaningful. The world narrows, time slows. You become aware of your own heartbeat, your own breath, your own presence in a vast and gentle night. So do auroras make noise? Perhaps sometimes, faintly, in ways we don't fully understand. Or perhaps the true sound of the aurora is the quiet it creates, the silence that settles over the landscape. The hush that falls inside the mind, the deep, steady calm that rests in your chest as the lights drift overhead. In the end, the aurora does not need a voice. Its silence is already music. Most auroras drift gently, appearing as soft curtains or quiet waves that move with the unhurried rhythm of a sleeping world. But every so often, on special nights shaped by the sun's deeper moods, the sky awakens with a brightness that feels almost impossible. These are the nights of high activity, nights when the aurora refuses to rest, when the solar wind carries a stronger breath, and when the quiet edges of the world fill with motion that feels both ancient and strangely alive. To understand these vibrant displays, imagine the sun not as a constant glow, but as a living sphere of fire and magnetism. Sometimes its surface twists more intensely, as magnetic loops snap and reform in violent slow motion. When this happens, the sun releases a surge of charged particles known as a coronal mass ejection, a large, fast-moving cloud of solar energy that travels outward like a ripple after a stone touches water. Most of these ripples drift harmlessly through space, but when one happens to align with Earth, the aurora becomes brighter, more active, more expansive. Yet even during these heightened moments, there is no sense of danger for us on the ground. The energy is absorbed and guided by Earth's magnetic field long before it reaches the surface. What we see instead is the peaceful side effect. The sky illuminated with unusual clarity, the colours deeper, the movement more expressive. The aurora, still silent and graceful, simply has more to say. On nights like these, the lights can stretch far beyond their usual home near the poles. They drift southward, appearing in places where people rarely expect them. Sometimes the aurora reaches latitudes where cities sleep unaware, and someone stepping outside for a moment of fresh air might look up to find the sky brushed with faint green arcs. In these unexpected places, the lights feel even more magical, as if the universe has decided to deliver its glow directly to those who never thought they would see it. The movement also changes during high-activity nights. Instead of slow curtains and gentle waves, the aurora may ripple quickly, flashing in pulses that race across the sky like silent lightning. Ribbons twist and untwist with surprising speed, forming spirals and arcs that rise and fade in moments. These rapid motions are the visible traces of Earth's magnetic field responding to the influx of particles, adjusting, realigning, flowing with the rhythm of the storm above. But even at their most active, the lights do not feel chaotic. There is still softness in their movements, still a sense of flow. The night does not feel loud or overwhelming. Instead, it feels alive, as if the sky itself has chosen to dance with more energy, more intention. People who witness such displays often describe an unusual mixture of excitement and tranquility, a sense of watching something powerful yet calming, immense yet peaceful. Imagine yourself beneath such a sky. The air is cold but still. The world around you is quiet, waiting. And above, the lights unfold not delicately, but confidently, sweeping across the horizon with brightness that feels almost warm. Shades of green intensify, violet edges flash, and faint hints of red bloom high above. The sky moves with a rhythm that feels like a slow drum beat, steady and deep, even though nothing makes a sound. Nights of high auroral activity remind us that even the most peaceful phenomena can hold immense energy within them. The universe is full of quiet storms that reveal themselves not through noise but through beauty. And the aurora, even at its strongest, remains a gentle companion, a luminous storm that never disturbs the silence of the night. If the northern lights could draw a map of themselves, it would appear not as scattered patches or random streaks, but as a glowing ring encircling the top of the planet. This ring is called the aurora oval, a quiet, continuous halo of invisible activity that surrounds the Arctic like a luminous crown. Even when you cannot see the lights from the ground, the oval is almost always there, drifting gently above the polar regions, expanding and contracting with the subtle breaths of the sun. To picture the aurora oval, imagine looking down at Earth from space. The continents lie silent beneath a blanket of darkness. The oceans stretch outward in deep blue stillness, and at the top of the world a soft ring of energy wraps around the pole. It does not flicker or flare constantly. Instead, it lingers, waiting. A quiet promise of light, a zone of potential that becomes visible only when the sky is dark enough, clear enough, and the incoming solar particles find their perfect path. This oval exists because Earth's magnetic field does not pull particles to a single point. Instead, the magnetic lines curve downward in a wide pattern, creating a region where solar particles are most likely to enter the atmosphere. They do not arrive straight down like rain. They spiral and drift, following those invisible arcs until they settle into this circular belt. And when they collide with the atoms of the upper atmosphere, the aurora reveals itself, not randomly but with the quiet geometry of nature. What makes the aurora oval so fascinating is that it is always moving, not dramatically but with the slow rhythm of Earth's interaction with the sun. When the solar wind is gentle, the oval contracts, pulling closer to the pole like a softly tightening ring. When the solar wind strengthens, the oval expands, reaching farther south as though the sky is stretching its arms. This expansion and contraction can happen over hours or days, giving the aurora a dynamic shape even when no one is watching from below. And within this oval, the lights do not glow evenly. There are places where the activity brightens, where ribbons form more easily, where waves ripple with more distinct movement. Some cities and quiet northern towns lie directly beneath the most active parts of the oval. For the people who live there, the aurora is not a rare event but a familiar companion, a presence woven into winter nights. The oval drifts overhead like a glowing river, even when hidden by daylight or cloud. From the ground, you may never think about this halo. You simply see the lights where you are, a ribbon to the north, a glow above the hills, a wave stretching across a frozen lake. But knowing that you are standing underneath a vast circular band of energy adds a gentle sense of connection, as if you are part of something larger, something continuous. The aurora you see in your sky is linked to lights dancing thousands of kilometers away, all belonging to the same flowing ring. As you rest tonight, imagine that halo above the Earth, a soft glowing wreath encircling the Arctic, a luminous reminder that even in darkness the planet carries a crown of quiet colour. And whether you are near it or far from it, the aurora oval continues its slow, patient drift, a silent geometry of light, always present, always waiting for night to reveal its glow. For every glow in the north, there is an answering light in the south. The aurora borealis has a twin, the aurora australis, or southern lights, drifting over Antarctica with the same quiet beauty, the same flowing shapes, the same soft palette of green, violet, and red. Many people never see this southern counterpart, simply because so few humans live beneath its shimmer, but it is always there, mirroring the northern sky like a reflection on the other side of the world. If you could stand at the Earth's south pole and look upward, you would recognize the same luminous forms you see in the Arctic, curtains that sway as though stirred by invisible tides, narrow ribbons stretching across the horizon, waves that move with the slow cadence of breath. The science behind both lights is identical. The solar wind touches Earth's magnetic field. The particles spiral downward, and the atmosphere glows where oxygen and nitrogen release their gentle light. Nothing is different, except the landscape below. The southern lights unfold over a world that feels almost like another planet. Antarctica is a vast frozen desert of ancient ice, sculpted by wind and silence. There are no forests beneath the glow, no villages tucked against snowy hills, no warm cabins pointed toward the sky. Instead, the lights drift above endless expanses of white and blue, illuminating a land shaped by cold and time. The absence of human presence makes the aurora australis feel even more ethereal, as if the lights belong entirely to the Earth itself. Scientists who have spent long nights at Antarctic research stations describe the aurora australis as deeply humbling. In the stillness, the glow seems brighter. With no artificial lights to compete, the sky becomes a vast canvas. Green ripples fall across glaciers. Violet edges trace the contours of icy cliffs. Rare crimson streaks appear above the black silhouette of the horizon, and all of it reflects off the frozen ground, doubling the light like a mirror made of frost. There is a quiet symmetry between north and south that feels comforting. The Earth does not allow one pole to hold all the beauty. It shares the glow evenly, shaping two halos instead of one. The same magnetic forces that guide the northern aurora shape the southern one simultaneously. When the aurora borealis brightens during a strong solar storm, the aurora australis brightens too. When the oval expands in the north, it expands in the south. It is like watching two dancers move through the same choreography on opposite ends of a stage. For many people, The southern lights exist only in imagination, a distant sister to the aurora borealis, shining in a place they may never visit. But that distance can make the idea even more soothing. Knowing that while you sleep, a quiet glow drifts across the bottom of the world, untouched, unseen by most, is a reminder that beauty continues even without an audience. The earth keeps glowing whether or not anyone is watching. As you relax into this moment, imagine the two lights together, the northern glow drifting above silent forests and snowy lakes, and the southern glow shimmering over vast fields of ice. They are linked through invisible magnetic threads, glowing together like two halves of the same calm breath. The planet is balanced by these twin displays, lights rising at opposite horizons, mirroring each other across a world wrapped in darkness and quiet. The aurora is not a single phenomenon, but a pair, a duet of colour flowing across both ends of our planet. And in that symmetry, there is peace, a soft reassurance that the world carries beauty in every direction. Long before science traced the aurora through magnetic fields and solar winds, early humans looked up at the glowing sky and searched for meaning. Imagine standing in a world without electricity, without satellites, without the noise of modern life. The night is deep, untouched by artificial light, and the air carries only the sound of wind moving through trees or across frozen plains. Then, without warning, the sky begins to glow, not like fire, not like lightning, but like something alive, drifting, shifting, shimmering with colour. For ancient eyes, the northern lights were not just a natural event. They were a message, a presence, a quiet doorway into mystery. Different cultures interpreted the lights through the stories that shaped their world. In the far north, where long winter nights pressed gently against the land, the aurora's appearance could feel like a blessing. Many believed the lights were spirits, ancestors returning to dance across the sky, reminding the living that they were never alone. The lights moved with grace, bending and swirling like figures in ceremonial robes. To some, the aurora was a bridge between the world of the living and the world beyond, a glowing reminder of continuity, memory, and connection. In other regions, the lights were seen as celestial fire. Some ancient peoples imagined great flames flickering at the edge of the world, carried by supernatural beings or reflected from unseen realms. The colour mattered too. Green might signal harmony, while red could feel like a warning or a reminder of powerful cosmic forces. These interpretations were not fearful so much as reverent. The sky was speaking in a language of light, and early humans responded with awe. There were also cultures that welcomed the aurora with joy. In some traditions, people believed the lights were playful spirits, racing across the sky, dancing to their own rhythm. Children were told to whistle at the lights to make them come closer, while adults watched with a mix of delight and respect. The movement of the aurora, the flickering waves and shifting curtains, seemed almost like laughter rippling across the heavens. And then there were stories of hunters who believed the lights guided animals, lighting their path in the deep winter night. The glow might reflect on snow-covered ground, revealing tracks that would otherwise be lost in darkness. The aurora was not just beauty, it was a companion, a gentle presence woven into the rhythms of survival. These myths were not primitive misunderstandings, they were a way of experiencing wonder. In a world where the stars were bright enough to cast shadows, and the Milky Way stretched unbroken across the sky, the aurora was a natural extension of the cosmos, a phenomenon that invited reflection. Early humans saw themselves as part of the landscape, part of the story, part of the universe's quiet unfolding. The lights were a reminder that the sky was not distant, it was alive. Tonight, as you rest, you can imagine those ancient nights, a gathering around a fire, soft fur-lined cloaks, the sound of snow shifting underfoot, and above, the slow bloom of green spreading across the darkness. the first murmurs of awe, the quiet sharing of a story, the understanding that the universe, vast as it is, can still touch us gently. The Northern Lights meant many things to early humans, but above all they meant this: the sky has something to say. And even now, with all our knowledge, that feeling remains unchanged. For thousands of years, the people who lived closest to the Northern Lights carried a deeper understanding of them than anyone else. Not scientific, perhaps, but something gentler, a wisdom shaped by long winters, vast landscapes, and a sky that was never fully dark. To the Inuit, the Sami, and other Arctic cultures, the aurora was not a distant spectacle. It was a familiar companion, weaving itself into daily life, stories, rituals, and quiet moments of reflection. These lights were not rare to them. They were present, alive, and filled with meaning. Among Inuit communities, the aurora often symbolized spirits, not in a fearful sense, but in a comforting one. Many believed that the lights were the souls of ancestors playing or dancing in the sky, guiding the living from above. Imagine standing on a frozen shoreline surrounded by the stillness of snow and sea ice, watching the sky ripple with soft green waves. The idea that these movements might be the joyful presence of loved ones would feel far more like reassurance than superstition. The aurora became a bridge, a reminder that no one is ever truly alone. In some Inuit stories, the lights carried the souls of animals as well: caribou, seals, whales, all part of the same cycle of life. These lights connected the earth to the heavens in a way that blurred boundaries. One realm touched the other. Life touched memory. Earth touched sky. For people whose survival depended on deep respect for the natural world, the aurora was a symbol of harmony between all living things. The Sami people of northern Scandinavia held their own gentle reverence for the lights. To them the aurora was powerful and sacred, something to observe quietly. The Sami word for the lights, guv-sahas, means the light you can hear. Not because the aurora made sound, though some believed it might, but because its presence was felt so vividly that it seemed to resonate in the air. People would avoid whistling or calling out to the lights, not out of fear but out of respect for something ancient and immensely present. The lights were woven into Sami clothing patterns, stories, and songs. Reindeer herders often worked beneath auroral skies, travelling across snowy expanses illuminated by the soft glow. Imagine guiding a herd at night, the quiet crunch of snow beneath your boots, and above you a green ribbon stretching from one horizon to the other. In such moments, the aurora was not only a spectacle, it was part of the world's rhythm. Other northern people saw the lights as omens of weather, or as signals from the spirit world, or as the reflection of fires burning far beyond the horizon. But almost all these traditions shared something important, a sense of humility. No matter how familiar the aurora became, it was never ordinary. It was always treated with respect, always approached with quiet acknowledgement. This wisdom, the wisdom of those who live beneath the glow, reminds us that some forms of knowledge come not from explanation, but from relationship. When you spend generation after generation beneath a sky that moves, you develop a different kind of understanding. Not just what the aurora is, but what it means. A reminder that the sky's alive with stories. A reminder that humans have always looked upward for guidance, wonder, and comfort. As you rest tonight, imagine the long chain of people who have stood beneath these same drifting lights. Hunters, families, travellers, elders, all finding their own kind of peace in the moving sky. The aurora is not just a scientific phenomenon. It is a thread that connects us across time, across cultures, across silence. For countless generations, the Northern Lights have been more than a spectacle. They have been a companion to travellers wandering through the far north. Long before GPS, long before lighthouses glowed along coastlines, long before maps were drawn with careful hands, voyagers looked to the sky for guidance. And in the Arctic, where long winters cloak the world in darkness, the aurora sometimes became a quiet lantern, a soft reminder of direction, distance, and home. Imagine a hunter crossing a frozen plain beneath a night sky so vast it seems endless. The snow is firm beneath his boots, the cold air sharp against his breath. The world around him is dim, muted, almost monochrome. But then he sees it, a faint green arc rising at the edge of the horizon. At first it is barely there, a whisper of colour brushing the darkness. Then it grows brighter, stretching into a gentle curve that bends over the land. In that moment he knows where north lies, not because the aurora is a compass, but because it is familiar. Its presence frames the landscape, marking the sky in a way that orients the heart as much as the mind. Sailors in the North Atlantic navigating treacherous waters under frozen stars often look to the aurora with a mixture of respect and comfort. When storms passed and the sky cleared, the glow of the lights signalled calm weather, a reassurance that the fierce winds had quieted. Some believed the aurora reflected sunlight from beyond the horizon, a sign that dawn was preparing to return. Others thought the lights were celestial fires guiding lost travellers toward land, and while the lights themselves did not steer ships, they lit the sky just enough for sailors to read the sea with greater clarity. In certain stories passed down in northern fishing communities, the aurora was described as a pathway, a shimmering road in the heavens that souls could follow home after long journeys. For people whose livelihoods depended on moving through harsh, unpredictable landscapes, this imagery offered comfort. The lights were not just beautiful, they were benevolent. They reminded voyagers that they were never truly alone on the silent ocean or the endless ice. Even today, modern travellers who chase the aurora across northern countries feel something similar. When the sky begins to glow, there is a sense of arrival, of being exactly where one is meant to be. Travellers gather at frozen lakes, on snowy hills, on sleeping roads that cut through forests. They wait, wrapped in layers, sharing warmth and hopeful glances. And when the first soft arc appears, the group falls quiet in unspoken agreement. This is the moment they came for. But beneath the wonder, there is still that ancient feeling that the lights are a kind of guide. Not in a practical sense, but in an emotional one. A reminder that direction can sometimes come from beauty, that orientation can come from awe. The aurora does not point a path across the land, yet people feel more grounded beneath its glow. The sky may be vast, but the lights create a sense of place. As you rest tonight, imagine yourself as one of those quiet voyagers. The cold world around you is hushed. Your steps are slow. Your breath clouds the air. And above, the lights begin to unfold, guiding your spirit more than your feet. In their soft glow, you feel the subtle pull of belonging, a gentle suggestion that every journey, no matter how long, eventually leads back to warmth, to stillness, to home. Long before satellites monitored solar activity and scientists mapped the behaviour of magnetic fields, the northern lights themselves served as a kind of quiet weather report for those who lived beneath them. In the far north, where storms could rise swiftly and winter nights stretched long, people learned to read the aurora the way others read the clouds or the wind. The sky offered clues, subtle patterns and gentle signals, a forecast written not in words or numbers but in drifting light. On calm, clear nights, the aurora often appeared as soft, slow-moving bands, the kind that ripple lazily across the sky, almost reluctant to move. These quiet lights were associated with still air, steady temperatures, and peaceful conditions. Hunters and travellers took comfort in them, recognizing that such displays often preceded nights of stable, predictable weather. The light's calmness reflected the world's calmness, as if the upper atmosphere were exhaling gently. But when the aurora grew sharper, brighter, or more restless, people noticed something different. Rapid flickers, swirling forms, and sudden pulses of colour sometimes signalled changes in the environment. Snowstorms approaching, winds shifting, the air preparing to move. The sky and the earth are deeply connected, and the aurora, though born of solar particles, responds to those subtle shifts. In this way, northern cultures learned that the sky's behaviour could mirror what was soon to unfold on the ground. Even today, scientists observe similar connections. When solar activity increases, when the aurora becomes more active and widespread, the upper atmosphere changes in ways that ripple downward. Radio signals travel differently. GPS readings shift slightly. Even the density of the atmosphere adjusts, affecting satellites as they orbit. These are gentle reminders that the aurora is not isolated. It is part of a much larger system of interactions that link space, sky, and earth. In the past, when people lived closer to the rhythms of nature, the lights were both a spectacle and a guide. The Sami, for instance, sometimes associated particularly strong auroras with upcoming storms, not out of fear, but practical observation. The glow overhead, crackling energetically, signalled that the air was charged, that weather was preparing to change. Fishermen along northern coasts noticed similar signs, watching the lights for hints of shifting winds or approaching fronts. Yet for all these practical interpretations, the aurora's forecast was never rigid or alarming. It was more a whisper than a warning, a suggestion woven into the fabric of the sky. The lights did not shout their meanings. They hinted, nudged, encouraged awareness. People learned to stand beneath the glow with open senses, feeling the slightest changes in temperature, pressure, or stillness. The aurora was part of that quiet conversation between humans and nature. Today, weather reports come from satellites, radar, and global networks. Yet the aurora still feels like a messenger. When it brightens unexpectedly or dances more quickly, scientists know the sun has stirred. When colours appear farther south than usual, experts recognise that a stronger wave of solar particles has arrived. And when the lights shimmer softly and steadily, the nights often remain calm. As you rest tonight, imagine the aurora as a flowing script across the sky, a luminous language that has been read by generations. Not a forecast you must decipher, but a reminder that the world is full of signs, patterns, and quiet connections. The sky responds to the sun, the air responds to the sky, and we, watching from below, respond to the beauty above. The aurora may not tell us what will happen tomorrow, but it reminds us to pay attention, to be present, and to trust the gentle rhythms of the world. Most people who witness the northern lights see them dressed in soft greens, gentle violets, and pale drifting whites. But on rare nights shaped by unusual solar energy and perfect atmospheric calm, the aurora reveals a deeper, quieter fire. A red glow, subtle at first, blooming slowly at the top of the sky like the memory of a sunset that refuses to fade. These red auroras are among the rarest forms of the northern lights, and their appearance feels like a secret shared only with those who happen to be looking at the sky at just the right moment. To understand this crimson light, imagine drifting far above the Earth, to altitudes between 200 and 300 kilometers, a region where the air is so thin it is almost space. Up here, oxygen behaves differently. When solar particles reach this height, the collisions are gentle, and the atoms take their time releasing light. Instead of glowing green, they glow red, releasing photons so slowly and delicately that the colour carries a softness unmatched by anything closer to the ground. From below, this red glow often appears as a faint dome of colour, like a quiet ember hovering above the horizon. It does not ripple or flicker as much as the brighter green auroras. Instead, it lingers. It expands gradually, reflecting a stillness that feels almost meditative. While green auroras dance and swirl, red auroras seem to hover in silent contemplation, as if the sky itself has paused to breathe. During strong solar storms, the red light can grow brighter, spreading across the sky in broad arcs that look like luminous clouds. Some historical accounts describe nights when the entire horizon glowed crimson, leading people to believe distant forests were burning or that strange fires were blazing beyond the mountains. Before science offered an explanation, this rare red glow often carried a sense of mystery, not fear, but reverence. It felt otherworldly because it was. The colour came not from Earth, but from the very edge of our atmosphere responding to the sun's distant pulse. Even today, seeing a red aurora feels like stumbling upon a hidden chapter of the sky. You might be watching gentle waves of green ripple across the night, when suddenly, above them, a faint blush begins to form. It brightens slowly, like ink spreading through water, and soon the sky holds two layers of light, green drifting below, red resting above. The combination creates a breathtaking contrast. A vertical gradient of colour that feels almost like watching the universe reveal its depth. Red auroras also behave quietly. They often appear without sharp edges, blending smoothly into the night. They lack the rapid motion of lower altitude lights, because the thin air above allows the glow to linger. If green auroras move like breath, red auroras move like thought, slow, deep, contemplative. As you rest tonight, imagine this rare glow unfolding in the sky above you, a broad red canopy stretching outward, silent and steady, a deeper calm radiating downward through the stillness, the kind of light that makes the world feel suspended, as if time itself has softened. Let the colour settle into your imagination, warm, gentle, unhurried. The sky's quiet fire, glowing softly in the cold darkness. These red auroras remind us that even within familiar beauty, rare moments wait to be discovered. They teach us that the universe has layers, subtleties, and quiet surprises. And when they appear, they invite us to slow down, breathe deeper, and witness the sky in a way few people ever do. It's easy to think of the aurora as something uniquely ours, a quiet gift that belongs to Earth alone. But the truth drifts far beyond our skies. The northern lights are only one expression of a much larger phenomenon woven throughout the solar system. Other planets, and even some moons, have their own auroras, their own dances of colour, their own silent interactions with the sun. When we look up at our green and violet sky, we are watching a performance echoed across worlds we may never visit. And this thought, gentle and vast, deepens the sense of wonder. Earth is not the only place where the sky glows. Take Jupiter, for instance, a giant made of swirling storms and deep, clouded bands. Jupiter's auroras burn brighter than anything on Earth, glowing constantly at its poles in rings so large they could swallow our entire planet. These lights are not delicate curtains but powerful halos, fueled not only by the solar wind but by volcanic material hurled into space from its moon Io. Imagine a ring of fire-like light that never fades, shifting with magnetic storms far stronger than anything Earth could ever feel. Even in Jupiter's endless thunder, the aurora remains a steady, luminous crown. Saturn, too, wears its own auroras, soft ovals drifting around its poles, glowing in ultraviolet shades invisible to our eyes. If you could stand on one of its icy moons and look up, you might see faint curtains dancing over Saturn's golden atmosphere, reflected gently across its rings like ripples of light on still water. The beauty would feel familiar yet foreign, as though you were watching Earth's aurora translated into a new language. Even Mars, with its thin atmosphere and fragmented magnetic fields, holds traces of auroral glow. Not grand sweeping arcs like ours, but small patches of ultraviolet light scattered across the sky, quiet sparks where pockets of magnetism guide solar particles downward. These Martian auroras are like whispers of what once might have been a stronger magnetic shield long ago. They hint at a younger Mars, perhaps more active, more alive in the distant past. Uranus and Neptune, the distant ice giants, also shimmer under the touch of solar particles. Their auroras, faint and cold, flicker in regions shaped by magnetic fields tilted in unusual directions. These lights rarely appear in colours we can see from Earth, but instruments detect their presence. Soft, distant echoes of the same cosmic interaction we witness in our own sky. Wherever a world has a magnetic field and an atmosphere, the potential for auroras exists. The recipe is universal: a star that breathes energy outward and a planet that responds with glow. And yet each world expresses this interaction differently. Earth in green and violet waves, Jupiter in powerful ultraviolet halos, Saturn in soft rings of pale light, Mars in scattered patches of faint glow. As you rest tonight, imagine drifting outward from Earth, slowly, gently, as if carried by a quiet tide of space. Below you, the aurora borealis and australis wrap the planet in soft veils of colour. Farther out, Jupiter gleams with rings of electric light. Saturn glows with ovals reflected across its icy rings. Mars flickers faintly. The distant giants whisper cold, pale arcs. Every world has its own sky fire, its own silent dance. The aurora is not just an earthbound wonder. It is a cosmic language, a conversation between stars and planets written in colour and movement. And knowing this brings a new kind of comfort. The universe is full of light, full of rhythms, full of quiet dances unfolding far beyond our reach. To understand the aurora more deeply, it helps to imagine not just the colours or the motion, but the heights at which this luminous dance unfolds. The northern lights are not painted on the surface of the sky. They float through layers of atmosphere so high and delicate that from the ground each shimmering ribbon is a glimpse into the edge of space itself. The aurora is not a single height or region. It is a vertical journey, a quiet ascent from the familiar air we breathe to the thin, silent border where the sky dissolves into the cosmos. Let's begin near the lower limit, around 100 kilometers above Earth. Here, the air is thin but still present, brushing lightly against particles drifting down from space. This is where nitrogen begins to glow in soft purples and deep blues, flickering quickly as the atoms release energy. These lower altitudes give the aurora its sharpest motions, the ripples, the quick pulses, the sudden folds that look like wind moving through a luminous curtain. This is the layer closest to our world, where the aurora feels most alive, most dynamic, most playful. A little higher, between 110 and 150 kilometers, the air becomes more rarefied and the glow of oxygen takes over. This is the realm of green, the familiar, soothing shade that most people picture when they think of the northern lights. At this height, the collisions between solar particles and oxygen are gentle and steady, producing long, smooth arcs and broad waves that drift with unhurried grace. The aurora here feels slower, calmer, as if the sky's moving through deeper breaths. Climbing further, past 200 kilometers, the atmosphere thins until it barely exists. This is where the rare red auroras are born, not from rapid interactions, but from oxygen atoms releasing energy slowly, taking their time in the emptiness. The red glow appears not as quick motion, but as a soft, lingering presence, like a faint cloud of colour suspended above the Earth. At this altitude, the boundary between atmosphere and space becomes blurry. The air is no longer something you could breathe, but a whisper of molecules drifting at the edge of the void. If you were able to rise through these layers, slowly, gently, the world would change beneath you. At 100 kilometers, the Earth would still look familiar, though dim and wide. You could trace coastlines and mountain ranges beneath the glow. At 150 kilometers, the curvature of the planet would start to reveal itself. The green aurora would stretch below like a luminous river winding across the night. At 250 kilometers and beyond, you would see the auroral oval from above, a glowing ring encircling the pole, shimmering like a halo resting on the Earth's surface. And above it all lies the true edge of space, a region not marked by a sharp boundary, but by a gradual shift. Air becoming vacuum, blue becoming black, clouds becoming continents drifting in silence. The aurora reaches into this threshold, painting light across a space where few phenomena can survive. It is one of the only natural wonders visible both from the ground and from orbit, connecting Earth to its surroundings in a single luminous gesture. As you rest, imagine yourself drifting upward through these heights. The air grows lighter, the world becomes quieter. The colours change. Violet near you, green stretching far, red glowing above, and higher still, the blackness of space touches the upper edges of the aurora like a soft curtain brushing the top of a glowing stage. The northern lights are not just a show in the sky. They're a vertical tapestry woven through layers of atmosphere, each height carrying its own colour, its own rhythm, its own quiet breath. One of the quiet mysteries of the northern lights is the way they move. Sometimes they drift like breath. Long, slow waves stretching across the sky with a softness that feels almost drowsy. And other times they flicker suddenly, pulsing with quick flashes of light that appear and disappear before the mind has time to fully grasp them. These two rhythms, the slow and the swift, coexist in a harmony that feels natural to the aurora, as if the sky itself is choosing when to exhale, gently, and when to sparkle with brief bursts of life. The slow waves come from broad flows of charged particles drifting along Earth's magnetic field. When the incoming energy is steady, the aurora responds with fluidity. Wide arcs form, stretching from one horizon to the other. Ribbons rise and fall with long, sweeping motions. The sky seems to breathe, as if the atmosphere were an enormous, luminous lung expanding and relaxing. Standing beneath these waves is deeply calming. You might watch the same soft swell move across the sky for minutes at a time, glowing with a rhythm that feels almost tied to your own heartbeat. The quick flickers, however, come from something much more delicate. When small changes occur in the flow of incoming particles, or when magnetic field lines shift slightly, the aurora reacts instantly. Light intensifies, fades, intensifies again. Quick flashes that sparkle like reflections on rippling water. These pulses are brief, unpredictable, playful. They appear along the edges of curtains, at the tips of spiraling arcs, or in thin streaks that shoot upward before dissolving into darkness. Scientists call these small bursts auroral curls, or pulsating patches, but to someone watching from below, they feel like the sky winking. It's the combination of these motions that makes the aurora feel alive. The slow waves give it grace, the flickers give it personality. You might see a broad green band drifting overhead, moving with serene purpose, while tiny violet sparks shimmer at its edges like fireflies. Or a curtain might ripple so slowly it seems barely moving, until a sudden flash runs across it like a thought passing through the sky. These contrasts never feel jarring. They blend into each other effortlessly, the same way stillness and movement blend in the resting body. Part of the beauty lies in the unpredictability. No one can ever fully predict how the aurora will move. Even the most seasoned watchers, photographers, guides, scientists, often find themselves surprised by a sudden flare or a subtle flicker. And yet, this unpredictability is gentle. It doesn't disturb. It invites. The aurora teaches us that not all motion needs structure or control. Some movements can simply be experienced, not understood. Imagine yourself watching the lights tonight. A soft wave drifts in from the north, stretching into a wide arc above the trees. You follow its movement slowly, your breath matching its rhythm. Then, without warning, a thin ribbon flashes above it, quick, bright, gone. Another spark appears at the edge of your vision. The sky becomes a conversation between slowness and spontaneity, between flowing calm and small bursts of joy. There's a lesson in this rhythm. Life, like the aurora, moves in waves and flickers, long stretches of quiet flow, interrupted by brief moments that catch your attention. A thought, a memory, a feeling. Neither is better than the other. Both belong. The slow gives depth, the flicker gives spark. As you rest, let this motion settle gently into your mind, the sky drifting in slow, luminous breaths, punctuated by soft flashes that shimmer for a moment and fade. The aurora moves the way calm thoughts move through a tired mind, sometimes steady, sometimes sudden, always carrying you towards stillness. The aurora may begin with the sun, but much of its character, its movement, its brightness, its subtle changes, comes from Earth itself. Our planet does not simply receive the solar wind, it responds to it. The atmosphere adjusts. Magnetic fields shift, invisible currents ripple through the air, and in this quiet interaction, the aurora becomes more than just a glow in the sky. It becomes a reflection of Earth's mood, a soft display shaped by the planet's own rhythms, its own delicate balance of forces. Deep beneath the ground, Earth's molten core generates the magnetic field that guides the aurora toward the poles. But the magnetosphere above, stretching far into space, is constantly reshaped by the solar wind pressing against it. When the incoming particles are gentle, the magnetic shield relaxes. The aurora glows softly, drifting in slow waves. But when the solar wind intensifies, the magnetosphere stretches and flexes, storing energy like a bow being drawn. When that energy is finally released, the aurora brightens, rippling with more vivid motion. Even the upper atmosphere, that thin layer where the aurora is born, changes its behavior depending on the energy it receives. When solar particles arrive in greater numbers, the atmosphere warms slightly, expanding outward like fabric loosening its weave. Satellites feel this expansion as a subtle increase in drag. Radio waves bend differently. Ionized particles drift along new paths. Earth's upper air becomes a living canvas, shifting in response to the sun's quiet moods. Birds too feel these changes. Many species migrate using Earth's magnetic field as a guide, sensing it with remarkable precision. During periods of strong auroral activity, when the magnetic field is temporarily disturbed, some birds adjust their routes or pause their journeys altogether. It is not dangerous, just disorienting, like a soft pulse in a compass needle. In this way, the aurora gently touches even the creatures below, brushing against their instincts like a whisper passing through the natural world. Humans, though less sensitive, still experience these subtle interactions. The glow might interfere gently with radio signals in the polar regions. GPS readings might drift slightly. In rare circumstances, long-distance communication takes on a faint static, as if the sky itself were humming. These tiny disturbances remind us that the aurora is not just light, it is a shift in the atmosphere, a ripple in the magnetic field, a sign that Earth is adjusting to the breath of the sun. And yet, for all these invisible movements, the aurora remains deeply peaceful to us on the ground. We do not feel the magnetosphere stretching or the upper air expanding. We only see the result, the soft light drifting across the sky, the slow pulse of colour, the shifting forms that follow Earth's invisible rhythms. It is like watching the quiet thoughts of a planet made visible, gentle, fluid, ever-changing. Imagine standing beneath the lights tonight. You see green waves drifting above you, unaware of the delicate chain of reactions unfolding high in the atmosphere. You see violet fringes at the edges of curtains, not knowing that electrons and atoms are dancing in invisible patterns. You see the sky responding peacefully, shaping light according to forces older than humanity. The aurora becomes a reminder that even the Earth has moods, calm nights, active nights, nights when the sky glows with unusual brightness. As you rest, hold this image gently, the aurora as Earth's quiet expression. A luminous response to a distant star, a soft movement shaped by invisible fields, a glow that reflects not just the sun's energy, but the planet's own serene heartbeat. There is a moment, quiet, simple, unforgettable, that happens to almost everyone who sees the Northern Lights for the first time. You look up expecting to admire something beautiful, but instead you feel something shift inside you. Not dramatically, not loudly, but softly, like a breath you didn't realize you were holding. The sky's no longer a distant ceiling. It moves, it changes, it responds. And suddenly, you're not just looking at light, you're standing beneath it, wrapped in its slow, drifting presence. Imagine a still winter night. The air is crisp, the kind of cold that sharpens sound and softens thought. Snow lies in gentle layers across the ground, smoothing the world into a landscape of white and shadow. Your footsteps make soft prints behind you. Your breath rises like a thin cloud of silver mist, and above, the stars scatter quietly across the dark. Then something shifts at the corner of your vision, a faint arc, a pale glow, a softening of the sky's darkness. You look up, and there it is, the aurora beginning its slow unfurling, almost shy at first. A gentle green ribbon lifts itself into the night, stretching lightly across the horizon. You feel, in that moment, a small tug in the chest, a widening, a quiet sense of being part of something vast and kind. As the light grows stronger, it moves with an elegance that doesn't seem possible. Curtains sway without wind, waves roll without sound. The colours gather and expand as if guided by a rhythm you cannot hear but can somehow feel. You stand still, because movement feels unnecessary. The world has slowed. Your thoughts soften. Even your heartbeat seems to find a gentler pattern. People often talk about awe as something dramatic, overwhelming. But the awe of the aurora is different. It's soothing. It doesn't rush into you. It settles over you like a warm blanket. You don't gasp. You breathe deeper. You don't think of words. You drift into quiet. The beauty is not a spark, but a slow bloom, unfolding gently, as if the sky's inviting you into its calm. In that moment, you realize how small you are. Not insignificantly small, but peacefully small. The kind of small that makes worries feel lighter, as though the sky is absorbing them. The kind of small that reminds you how much beauty can exist far beyond your daily world. The aurora does not ask for anything. It simply moves, slowly, softly, existing for anyone who pauses long enough to look. Now, imagine closing your eyes just for a moment. You feel the cold air on your cheeks. You hear the faint crunch of snow as you shift your weight. And even with your eyes closed, you sense the motion above you, the changing brightness, the shifting colours, the sky breathing in long, luminous waves. When you open your eyes again, the aurora has shifted. Perhaps it has stretched into a tall arc. Perhaps it has divided into two curtains. Perhaps a faint violet edge has begun to appear. Its motion feels like time passing gently. Standing beneath moving light reminds you of something ancient, that humans have always looked upward for peace, that in the quiet of night, the sky has a way of calming the heart. That wonder does not need explanation to be meaningful. That silence can be full, not empty. As you rest tonight, imagine yourself beneath that sky again. The world hushed, the stars steady, the lights drifting in long, soft waves. A moment where nothing is required of you. A moment where the universe feels close. A moment that asks only that you breathe. If you ask people who chase the aurora, where they have seen the lights most vividly, they will almost always give the same answer. On the coldest nights when the air is still, the stars seem sharper and the snow beneath your feet cracks quietly with every step. There is something about frozen air, clean, crisp, unmoving, that makes the colours of the northern lights appear deeper, clearer, almost impossibly bright. The science behind this is simple, yet the feeling it creates is something far more profound. Cold air is calm air. When temperatures drop, moisture in the atmosphere freezes and falls away, leaving the sky dry and transparent. There is no haze, no drifting humidity, no thin mist to blur the glow. The atmosphere becomes a pristine lens, allowing every ripple of green and every faint trace of violet to shine with remarkable clarity. On such nights, even a gentle aurora, one that might look pale on a warmer evening, becomes vivid, sharp-edged, almost three-dimensional. You can think of it like cleaning a window. The aurora itself hasn't changed. It is the same stream of light drifting through the same upper atmosphere. But when the lower air is clear, your view becomes pure. Light travels through it without distortion, without scattering. What you see is what truly exists. The raw, luminous dance of energy shaped by the earth and sun. There is also the stillness. On warmer nights, the air moves just enough to create subtle turbulence, tiny waves and shifts that distort light in ways our eyes cannot consciously detect. But on very cold nights, the air settles. The world freezes into quiet. Without the movement of warmer currents, the sky becomes a perfect canvas. The aurora rises through the stillness like ink swirling gently in clear water. In the Arctic, locals speak of this in a way that blends observation with intuition. They say the relics love the cold, that they shine harder when the air bites at your skin, that the sky needs to freeze to remember how to glow. These may be poetic explanations, but they capture a truth that science confirms. When the atmosphere is stable and transparent, the colours reach their purest form, and there is more, something that cannot be explained only by physics. The cold changes your perception. When the air is crisp and sharp, your senses heighten. Every star feels closer. Every sound feels quieter. Your breath rises in slow clouds, making you more aware of your own rhythm. The cold pulls you into the moment. It demands presence. So when the aurora appears, glowing intensely against the deep winter sky, you do not simply see it, you feel its brightness. Imagine standing on a snow-covered field at -20 degrees Celsius. The snow beneath you reflects light like a sheet of crystals. The air is so clear you can almost see the stars shimmer, and then a long green arc stretches above, glowing brighter than you ever expected. A violet trace appears at the edges. A faint blush of red hovers higher still. The cold makes the colours seem sharper, cleaner, like a painting made of pure light. As you breathe, the air feels tight and still around you, and the aurora seems to respond. It shifts slowly, each movement crisp and distinct. Even the darkness feels deeper, creating a contrast that makes the lights more vivid. In that moment, the cold is no longer discomfort. It becomes part of the experience, a quiet partner to the glow above. As you rest tonight, imagine this perfect clarity, a sky washed clean, cold enough to hold its shape, bright enough to let the aurora shine fully. A night where every star is steady, every colour crisp, every breath slow and visible. A night where the world, frozen into silence, becomes the perfect frame for a drifting river of light. The northern lights may seem unpredictable, appearing suddenly, drifting in and out of the night with moods that feel spontaneous. But behind their shifting presence lies a quiet rhythm, a cosmic cycle woven into the heart of the sun itself. Every 11 years, the sun's magnetic activity rises and falls, growing restless, then calming again. And with each turn of this cycle, the aurora follows, The sky brightens, softens, brightens again. It is as though the lights breathe with the sun's own long, steady inhale and exhale. To understand this cycle, imagine the sun not as a static sphere of glowing gas, but as a living magnetic ocean. Its surface churns with loops of energy, swirling currents, and rising plumes. These motions twist the sun's magnetic field into complex patterns that change over time. At the peak of the 11-year cycle, the sun becomes more active, sending stronger solar winds, releasing more charged particles, and occasionally launching vast clouds of energy into space. When these reach Earth, the auroras grow brighter, more frequent, more widespread. During these solar maximum years, the aurora oval expands. The lights drift farther south, touching skies that rarely see them. People in cities far from the poles suddenly find themselves stepping outside to green arcs glowing above unfamiliar rooftops. Photographers travel north with greater anticipation. Scientists observe the magnetosphere responding more energetically. The sky feels awake, vivid, expressive, stirred by the sun's heightened breath. But just as winter follows autumn, the sun quiets again. The cycle enters its slower phase, the solar minimum. During these calmer years, the aurora becomes more selective, staying closer to the Arctic's deep night. The displays still happen, but they are more subtle, more delicate. The lights appear like gentle reminders rather than sweeping performances. And the darkness of the polar sky feels even more sacred, because the glow comes not with intensity, but with intimacy. This rhythm is repeated for centuries, long before humans understood it, long before instruments captured its effects. Ancient observers simply noticed that some generations were blessed with brighter skies, while others saw dimmer, rarer lights. They did not know the cause, but they sensed a pattern, a slow turning, a cycle woven into the stars. Even today, knowing the science does not diminish the wonder. If anything, it deepens it. The idea that the aurora follows the heartbeat of our star, a cycle lasting nearly a dozen years, gives the lights a sense of continuity. What you see in the sky tonight is part of a larger story unfolding for generations before and after you. A teenager watching their first aurora tonight will see a much stronger display in their mid-20s. Someone who remembers a vivid sky from childhood may witness a similar brightness again decades later. The lights become milestones on the timeline of a life. As you rest, imagine this slow rhythm extending beyond you, the sun turning its magnetic tide, Earth responding, adjusting its protective field, and the aurora rising and fading again and again, like a luminous pulse echoing across time. The cycle is unhurried. It has no urgency. It continues whether or not we watch. But when we do, when we stand beneath the drifting glow, we feel connected to something vast, steady, and reassuring. The northern lights are not just a momentary display. They are part of a cosmic rhythm more ancient than humanity itself, a reminder that even the sky follows patterns of rest and renewal. Long before satellites measured solar wind and long before scientists traced magnetic lines across detailed maps, ancient observers quietly recorded the movement of the aurora. Their writings, carved into stone, brushed into scrolls, whispered across generations, tell us something profound. The northern lights have been appearing in rhythmic, almost predictable patterns for thousands of years. They are not new, not fleeting, not bound to any single era. They are a thread woven through the history of humanity, repeating again and again, lighting the sky for every generation that has ever looked upward in the cold of night. In Chinese historical texts, some dating back more than 2,000 years, scholars described shimmering celestial vapours drifting across the northern horizon. They wrote of glowing arcs and long curtains of light, descriptions that mirror the aurora borealis with surprising clarity. These observations were not poetic exaggerations. They were careful notes from people who paid close attention to the sky. Even then, the lights appeared during strong solar cycles reaching latitudes far south of their usual home. In medieval Europe, monks documented nights when the sky filled with red dragons, fiery serpents, and heavenly banners. Though filtered through the imagery of their time, the descriptions speak of large red auroras, rare displays that often accompany powerful solar storms. These events stand out in the records not because they were frightening, but because they were unforgettable. The monks wrote with reverence, sensing that the lights were messages in the fabric of the heavens. Farther north, Norse sagas referred to the aurora as reflections from shields or from distant fires burning beyond the edge of the world. These stories, though wrapped in mythology, preserve a truth. The lights were a constant presence for Arctic peoples. Generations passed under the same glowing sky. Children saw the same shimmering arcs their ancestors had seen. The lights repeated, unhurried, through centuries of long winters. Even indigenous oral traditions passed down through memory rather than writing contain remarkably consistent descriptions. Across vast distances and unrelated cultures, the aurora was described as drifting, dancing, shimmering, unpredictable yet familiar. These similarities remind us that the lights have moved through the same motions, the same waves, the same flickers, the same arcs, for as long as humans have watched them. If we could gather all these accounts, from Chinese scholars, medieval monks, Norse storytellers, Inuit elders, Sami herders, Siberian hunters, and place them side by side, we would see the same patterns repeating. The sky glows brightest during certain centuries. Certain generations witness stronger lights. Certain winters become famous for colour that touched unexpected regions. The same cycle of brightness and calm, tied to the sun's magnetic rhythm, has shaped the aurora for ages. There is comfort in knowing that you are watching the same light that shone above ancient forests, frozen seas, and early human settlements. When you stand beneath the aurora today, you share a moment with people who lived long before electricity, before cities, before the modern world. They saw what you see. They paused as you pause. They felt the same quiet awe, a sense that the sky was alive with something gentle and immense. As you rest tonight, imagine time unfolding not in straight lines, but in loops. Century after century, the aurora returns in its patterns. The sun brightens, dims, brightens again. The lights drift across polar skies long after memories fade, long after stories shift, long after civilizations rise and fall. The aurora is a reminder of continuity, a soft glow repeating across the ages, connecting us to the distant past. What you see in the sky is ancient. What you feel beneath it is timeless. For as long as the aurora has drifted across the night, people have tried to capture its beauty, first with memory, then with paint, and now with cameras that peer deeper into the darkness than the human eye ever could. But photographing the northern lights is unlike capturing any other scene. The aurora moves, shifts, ripples, fades, and brightens with a rhythm entirely its own. It is light that refuses to stay still, a living glow that dances faster or slower depending on the sky's quiet mood. And so, every photograph of the aurora becomes not just an image, but a collaboration between the sky's motion and the camera's patience. To the human eye, the aurora often appears softer than what you see in pictures. Our vision adapts slowly in the dark. It gathers light in small, careful doses. Cameras, especially those with long exposures, can collect light over several seconds, revealing colours and shapes too faint or too swift for us to notice. That's why photographs sometimes show vivid violets, deep reds, and dramatic arcs that feel more intense than what you remember. The camera isn't exaggerating, it's simply seeing more of what's already there, catching whispers of colour our eyes can't gather quickly enough. A long exposure can smooth out the movement of the lights, turning flickers into silky ribbons and rapid pulses into soft waves. A fast exposure captures the sharper edges, the curls and sparks, the fleeting shapes that dissolve in moments. Each technique reveals a different personality of the aurora, just as each watcher experiences the lights in their own way. No photograph is wrong. No image is complete. Each is a fragment of a dance too fluid to be held entirely in a single frame. There is something soothing about this. The aurora refuses to be captured fully because it belongs to the moment. The colours you see are the colours of that minute, under that sky, shaped by that pulse of solar energy drifting through space. Even if two people stand side by side, their perspectives differ slightly. The angle of the light, the brightness of the stars, the movement of the waves, and photographs, no matter how detailed, remain gentle approximations of a glow that is always in motion. For the photographer, the experience is meditative, setting up a tripod in the snow, adjusting the lens with gloved hands, listening to the faint crunch of ice underfoot, watching your own breath drift upward in pale clouds, and above all, waiting, calmly, quietly, for the next ripple of light to bloom across the sky. In those moments, the world slows, every distraction fades, all attention narrows to the horizon where faint glows begin to strengthen. Some nights, the lights only offer a soft haze, a delicate wash of colour that the camera reveals more clearly than the eye. Other nights, the sky erupts in shapes that even a long exposure struggles to keep up with, sweeping arcs, spirals, rapid flickers. And sometimes, the most meaningful photographs come from the gentlest displays. A thin green line, a shade of violet tracing the edge of a cloud, the quiet presence of the auroral oval revealing itself in subtle motion. Yet the most beautiful part of photographing the aurora is not the image itself. It's the stillness required to create it. You stand in the cold, beneath a sky that glows and shifts, and you breathe slowly, matching the pace of the light. You become part of the moment, not rushing, not controlling, simply witnessing. The photograph becomes a souvenir of a silence you shared with the sky. As you rest tonight, imagine that feeling. The steady tripod, the quiet shutter, the slow glow drifting through the darkness. A moment suspended in time, even as the aurora continues its endless gentle dance above. In the far north, there comes a time each year when the sun does not rise. Not for a day, not for a week, but for long stretches of winter when the horizon remains dark and the world drifts in a deep, extended night. This is the polar night, a season that feels like a quiet dream, where time softens and the line between evening and dawn dissolves, and during these long hours of darkness the northern lights step forward, offering a kind of gentle companionship. When the sun disappears, the aurora becomes the sky's soft substitute for daylight, a drifting glow that reminds those who live in the Arctic that light never fully leaves. Imagine waking in a cabin where morning is marked not by sunlight, but by the faint silver-blue glow of snow reflecting starlight. The air is cold enough to quiet every sound. The world moves slowly. People adapt to a rhythm without sunrises, lighting lamps, welcoming the warmth of indoor spaces, finding comfort in routine. And outside the sky waits, ready to reveal its own unique brightness. Then, on a silent evening, though evening is only a word when day and night look the same, the aurora begins to appear. A pale arc stretches across the horizon. It brightens, widens, lifts itself upward until the entire sky is brushed in soft green light. In a place without a sun, this becomes the day's illumination. Not harsh, not overwhelming, but gentle and dreamlike, as if the world is living beneath a softly glowing ocean. In the polar night, the aurora feels different. It is not a spectacle you search for. It is a presence that accompanies daily life. People step outside to gather firewood and find the sky shifting above them. Travellers move by sled or snowmobile with waves of light guiding their path. Even the snow seems to change, reflecting the glow in shades of pale green and violet, turning the landscape into a luminous world where shadows drift softly across frozen ground. For Arctic communities, this glow becomes woven into memory. Children grow up knowing that winter nights are not truly dark. Elders speak of years when the lights burned unusually bright, filling the sky with colours that seemed almost alive. Hunters tell stories of nights when the aurora shimmered so vividly that it cast enough light to walk without a torch. The aurora becomes not just a phenomenon, but a companion, a quiet guardian of the long sunless season. There is something deeply comforting in this relationship. While the rest of the world waits for sunrise, the Arctic has the aurora, a reminder that even in prolonged darkness, beauty persists. The lights drift across the heavens not as a replacement for the sun, but as a reassurance that illumination can take many forms. The sky does not need daylight to glow. It carries its own gentle radiance. Imagine yourself standing beneath this polar night. The air is cold enough to make each breath feel crisp and precise. The snow glows faintly in the aurora's light, casting long, soft shadows behind you. The horizon is a deep, endless blue. Above, waves of green move slowly like distant tides. You feel no rush, no urgency. The world is still, wrapped in a quiet luminescence that feels both vast and intimate. As you rest tonight, think of this long winter darkness not as emptiness, but as a canvas, a place where light returns in a different form. The aurora becomes the sky's answer to the missing sun, offering colour instead of warmth, motion instead of brightness, peace instead of glare. In the polar night, the world does not lose its light, it simply changes the way it shines. When we think of the northern lights, we picture shades of green, violet and red drifting across the night, but these colours, beautiful as they are, represent only a small fraction of the aurora's true glow. Much of the aurora's light is invisible to us, hidden in wavelengths our eyes cannot detect. Ultraviolet light, infrared waves, faint emissions that lie beyond the limits of human perception. The sky is far brighter, far more active, far more expressive than we ever realise. We simply see the version meant for us, the visible whisper of a much larger luminous conversation between Earth and the sun. Our eyes evolved to detect only a narrow band of light, the small slice useful for everyday life. Greens, blues, reds, these helped our ancestors admire landscapes, find food, see the pattern of day and night. But the aurora stretches across a much broader spectrum. Instruments on satellites, high-altitude balloons, and specialized cameras reveal ultraviolet arcs shimmering far above the green bands we see from the ground. They reveal patches of light flickering in invisible tones. They reveal a world glowing beyond our color palette. Ultraviolet auroras, mostly unseen by humans, trace the highest edges of the auroral oval. They shimmer hundreds of kilometers above Earth, forming shapes that appear and vanish too quickly for our eyes, but not too quickly for machines. In ultraviolet, the aurora looks sharper, more intricate, almost crystalline. Each structure has a delicate boundary, like lace woven from starlight. If humans could see this ultraviolet glow, the night sky during strong auroral displays would feel even more vibrant. A cathedral dome filled with shifting invisible stained glass. Infrared auroras, on the other hand, emerge from lower altitudes, where nitrogen and other atmospheric molecules release warmth as light. This glow is too soft and too warm-toned for us to perceive, but infrared cameras capture it as gentle waves, slow, soothing, almost like the quiet exhale of the atmosphere. These wavelengths tell scientists stories about the temperature of the upper air, about how energy moves through the night, about how the sky settles after solar storms. There are even auroral emissions that do not fit neatly into the visible spectrum at all. radio waves, X-rays, subtle electric patterns vibrating across magnetic field lines. These forms of invisible aurora reveal the deeper complexity of Earth's interaction with the Sun. To our senses, these emissions are silent. To instruments, they are music, patterns of energy rising and falling in delicate rhythms. In a way, every aurora we witness is only the surface of something vaster. When you stand beneath the shimmering lights, you're watching one layer of a phenomenon unfolding across many dimensions. What you see is beautiful. What you cannot see is equally so, a hidden glow bursting with colour your eyes were not built to interpret. The sky above you, even when dark, is filled with light your body cannot perceive, and perhaps that is part of the magic. The aurora reminds us that the world is always more than what meets the eye. Beneath every visible glow lies invisible radiance. Beneath every colour lies another wavelength we cannot grasp. Beneath every moment of beauty lies an entire unseen universe, unfolding quietly. As you rest tonight, imagine the sky glowing in all its hidden forms, ultraviolet waves rippling far above the green lights, infrared glimmers drifting below, radio pulses humming softly through the magnetic field. The night is never truly dark. It is layered with light, visible and invisible, seen and unseen. The aurora you witness is only the beginning of the aurora that exists. Every aurora begins with sunlight, not the warm rays we feel on our skin, but particles and energy pushed outward from the sun long after daylight has faded. In a way, the northern lights are a kind of memory, a memory the sky keeps of the sun's distant breath. Even when the sun is hidden below the horizon for months at a time, its influence lingers, travelling across the cold emptiness of space until it reaches Earth. The aurora is the sky recalling that touch, glowing gently with the echo of a star. Think of sunlight not just as brightness, but as motion. Every moment, the sun releases streams of particles that drift outward like messages cast into a cosmic sea. Some travel for days before finding Earth, others wander for weeks. A few ride the larger currents of the solar wind, carried by the magnetic fluctuations of the sun's ever-changing surface. These particles have no urgency. They move with the slow patience of space itself. And when they finally arrive, guided by Earth's magnetic field, they unfold into colours as soft as breath. In this sense, the aurora is memory made visible. The sun whispers, the Earth glows in reply. When you stand beneath the northern lights, you are witnessing energy that left the sun long before it brushed the atmosphere above your head. The green wave drifting across the sky may have begun its journey when you were in a different season of life, in a different place, with different thoughts, different worries. The light is not immediate. It is a reminder that the universe moves on longer timescales than we do. What reaches us now is shaped by the past, transformed by distance, softened by time. Even the colours hold memory. The green glow remembers where oxygen atoms meet the incoming particles. The violet remembers where nitrogen flickers at lower altitudes. The rare red remembers the thin edge of the atmosphere where collisions slow and atoms hold their energy for long suspended moments. Every shade is tied to a place, a process, a path. The sky glows not randomly, but with the quiet precision of a memory returning in fragments. From space, astronauts often describe the aurora as a luminous barrier, a curved ribbon wrapping around the Earth, shimmering like a living boundary between the planet and the void. They see the glow from above, rising along the horizon like a thin fog of light. And in that perspective, the aurora becomes even more clearly a record of solar memory, a glowing outline tracing the shape of the world, reminding us that Earth is always in conversation with its star. There is something deeply comforting in this cosmic exchange. Even in the coldest, darkest nights of the Arctic winter, nights when the sun feels impossibly distant, the aurora appears, a quiet assurance that the sun has not forgotten, that its energy continues to travel, continues to arrive, continues to stir the sky with colour even when its physical presence is absent. The aurora is the warmth of a star translated into the gentle language of night. As you rest, imagine this memory drifting above you, long threads of energy, born in the heart of the sun, travelling through silent space, finally meeting Earth with tenderness. The lights shift, ripple, and dissolve, not urgently but patiently, like memories resurfacing in calm waves. The sky remembers the sun, and beneath that memory you find a little more peace. If you were to imagine the Earth as a living being, the aurora would feel like its breath, a slow, luminous exhale rising into the night. The atmosphere, invisible during the day, reveals its presence through the northern lights. As particles drift down, guided by the magnetic field, the air itself begins to glow, releasing colour the way a resting body releases warmth. In this sense, the aurora becomes the atmosphere's soft reminder that even the sky participates in a quiet rhythm. It takes in energy, holds it gently, and then lets it go as light. High above the world, where the air thins into near emptiness, oxygen and nitrogen wait like quiet observers. They float, unhurried, untouched by the winds that move beneath them. When particles from the sun arrive, these atoms absorb the incoming energy with a kind of graceful patience. They do not burst or blaze, they simply hold, and then, when the time is right, a fraction of a second for nitrogen, a long slow stretch for oxygen high above, they release the energy again, not as heat or sound, but as a glimmer of colour drifting across the sky. It is this gentle release, this exhale, that we see from the ground. The green waves, the violet edges, the rare red glows, are all the atmosphere letting go of the sunlight it collected along its magnetic paths. The aurora is not simply light arriving from space, it is light transformed by Earth itself. A conversation becomes an expression, a touch becomes a glow. Imagine this process unfolding slowly, delicately. A charged particle spirals downward. It meets an oxygen atom drifting quietly 150 kilometers above the ground. For a moment they share energy, an exchange too small for any human sense to detect. And then the oxygen releases a soft green photon, sending it outward into the darkness. Millions upon millions of these tiny exhalations create the long curtains we admire. Each one is a quiet gesture, but together they illuminate the sky. What makes this image so calming is the rhythm behind it. The aurora does not flicker because of chaos. It flickers because countless atoms are releasing energy at slightly different times. It ripples the way a field of grass ripples in the wind, not all at once, but in overlapping waves. The atmosphere glows in pulses, in breaths, in tiny, shimmering sighs. And when the aurora grows brighter, it is simply the atmosphere exhaling more deeply, touched by a stronger flow of solar wind. There is no violence in this glow, no tearing, no burning, just energy moving from one state to another with the gentlest of transitions. The sky breathes in the sun's distant motion. The sky breathes out colour. Even the shapes of the aurora reflect this fluidity. Curtains sway like long exhalations stretching across the horizon. Ribbons twist like air moving through a narrow space. Waves roll with the steady rhythm of a resting chest. The entire display feels alive not because it behaves unpredictably, but because it moves with a natural softness that mirrors the patterns we find in nature. Waves, wind, breath, light. As you rest tonight, imagine the atmosphere above you not as empty space, but as a patient, luminous presence. Picture it releasing light the way your own body releases tension, slowly, gradually, tenderly. The aurora becomes a reflection of the Earth's quiet exhale, rising into the sky in glowing threads. The world breathes, the sky glows, and we, beneath it, feel that same slow rhythm easing into our own breath, our own thoughts, our own quiet. Long before the first aurora shimmered across Earth's sky, before life emerged in oceans or walked upon land, our planet forged a quiet protection, an invisible magnetic shield that would become the foundation for every breath, every heartbeat, every dream that followed. We cannot see this shield, we cannot touch it, yet it surrounds us completely, shaping the space around Earth with a presence as gentle as it is essential, and the aurora, drifting in soft waves above the poles, is one of the few moments when this hidden guardian reveals itself, glowing faintly like a signature written across the sky. Earth's magnetic field begins deep beneath our feet, in the swirling ocean of molten iron within the outer core. As this liquid metal moves, it generates magnetic forces that extend outward, far beyond the atmosphere, forming a vast protective bubble called the magnetosphere. This bubble deflects harmful particles from the sun, steering them away from the surface. Without it, the solar wind would slowly strip our atmosphere away, leaving Earth exposed and barren, like a candle left in the open to be blown out. But because this magnetic shield exists, strong, quiet, and always present, our planet retains its air, its oceans, its warmth. It holds the conditions that allow forests to grow, rivers to flow, mountains to stand, and human beings to rest beneath a sky rich with colour. The aurora is not just a beautiful result of this protection, it is a reminder of it, a reminder that even forces we cannot see can shape our lives in the most profound ways. Imagine Earth moving through space, wrapped in this magnetic cocoon. When particles from the sun arrive, the magnetosphere bends around them, absorbing the impact of their energy. Most of the particles flow harmlessly past, like wind sliding around a stone in a river. But a small number slip through near the poles, travelling along magnetic field lines as if guided by invisible trails. These are the particles that create the aurora, not destructive but transformed into gentle light by the atmosphere's quiet exhale. It feels humbling to think that the lights we admire are born from a shield designed to keep us safe. The aurora's glow is not chaotic, it is the soft edge of a powerful act of protection happening far above us. The sky is not simply beautiful at night, it is alive with the evidence of the Earth watching over itself. This invisible guardian affects living beings in subtle ways as well. Many animals, birds, whales, bees, even tiny microorganisms, use Earth's magnetic field to navigate. They sense it not with eyes or ears, but with built-in biological compasses shaped by evolution. They move through the world guided by a force humans rarely notice. And though we do not feel the magnetic field consciously, our lives unfold safely within its shelter. When you stand beneath the aurora, you're standing beneath the visible outline of this shield, light tracing the pathways where energy enters, where the atmosphere responds, where Earth's protection becomes something beautiful. The green and violet waves drifting overhead are not just visual wonders, they are reminders of the balance that makes life possible, the quiet order beneath the universe's seeming chaos. As you rest tonight, imagine this shield wrapping around the planet, not as a barrier, but as an embrace, a field of invisible lines curving through space, guiding particles shaping the sky, holding the world in a calm that allows living beings to breathe, grow, wander, and dream. The aurora is Earth's soft reminder. You're protected, even when you cannot see the protection. Between the sun and the earth lies a vastness so quiet, so weightless, that it feels almost like the universe's great pause, a space where light travels unbothered, where particles drift without sound, where time stretches gently across millions of kilometers. It is easy to imagine this space as empty, a hollow distance separating our world from its star. But in truth, the space between the sun and earth is alive with motion, energy, and silent conversation. And the aurora is one of the most beautiful expressions of that relationship, a shimmering reminder that even across unimaginable distances connection persists. If you picture the sun and earth as two beings exchanging breath, then the solar wind is the long, delicate exhale that carries the sun's energy outward. It drifts for days, moving through the interplanetary medium, a realm filled with magnetic fields, tiny particles, and traces of ancient stardust. This space is not dark in the way we imagine darkness. It glimmers faintly with scattered photons. It hums with electromagnetic waves. It holds remnants of comets, the echo of flares, the quiet whisper of solar rotations. Earth does not simply sit within this space, it participates in it. The magnetosphere extends outward like a cocoon, meeting the sun's exhale halfway. Where the two forces meet, they dance, pushing, pulling, shaping each other with invisible motions. The boundary between them is not rigid but fluid, bending with each solar gust, twisting gently with each shift in the sun's magnetic field. This delicate balance forms the stage where auroras are born. What's remarkable is that this connection exists even though the sun and earth never truly touch. Their relationship is one of influence, not contact. Energy travels across a cosmic gulf, arrives months after leaving the solar surface, and is transformed into the glowing colours we see in the sky. It is a relationship built on distance, yet made gentle by time. The sun sends, earth receives, and the aurora becomes the luminous signature of their bond. Sometimes the solar wind arrives softly, a breeze gliding across the magnetosphere. Other times, it carries more energy, more momentum, sending ripples through Earth's magnetic field that can shift auroral patterns for hours. And on rare occasions, the sun releases a strong pulse, causing the aurora to brighten and expand in ways that remind us just how connected our world is to the star that warms it. The space between Earth and the sun is filled with stories of particles born in solar storms, racing outward at breathtaking speeds, stories of ancient flares preserved in ice core records on Earth, stories of energy patterns that affect not only the aurora, but the atmosphere itself, subtle influences that ebb and flow over centuries. The aurora is simply the part we can see, the visible chapter of a much larger cosmic narrative. And yet, despite the complexity of this relationship, what we feel beneath the aurora is simple, a sense of belonging, a sense that Earth is not isolated in the universe, but embraced by forces that connect it to its star in soft, luminous ways. The lights drifting above us are not random occurrences, they are messages carried from a distant sun, shaped by a planet that listens. As you rest tonight, imagine that vast space stretched between Earth and the sun, not empty, not silent, but full of quiet motion. Picture particles crossing that distance drawn by invisible lines, arriving with a softness that becomes colour. The aurora is the bridge between worlds, a living ribbon connecting the Earth to its source of light. Across distance, across darkness, across time, the sun and Earth remain in conversation, and the sky glows because of it. There are places on Earth where the northern lights feel almost personal, not a spectacle shared by crowds, not a highlight captured by tours or cities, but a quiet presence meant only for those who happen to be there. These remote auroras appear in landscapes untouched by roads, far from electricity, far from noise, far from the warmth of human gathering. In these isolated corners of the world, the sky does not perform, it simply exists, glowing silently above frozen lakes, empty tundras, lonely mountain passes, and seas that sleep under sheets of ice. And in this solitude, the aurora becomes something deeper than beauty. It becomes a companion to stillness. Imagine standing on a frozen lake miles from the nearest village. The ice stretches outward like a glass plane. creaking faintly under the slow shift of temperature. The wind has quieted. Even the trees at the shoreline stand frozen, their branches coated in delicate frost. There are no headlights, no engines, no footsteps but your own. The only sound is the whisper of winter breathing across the surface of the world. Then, as if answering the silence, a soft green glow rises from the horizon. In a remote place, the aurora begins subtly, not with sudden drama, but like a memory forming in the sky. It unfolds slowly, a thin ribbon brightening just enough for your eyes to catch, and because there are no other lights, no competing glow from towns or passing cars, the aurora feels impossibly close. It is as though the sky has lowered itself toward you, inviting you to witness its quiet movement. The colours deepen. Waves stretch across the darkness. The lake reflects the glow, turning the world into a double sky. One above, one below, with you standing in the thin line between them. In such solitude, the aurora feels less like a distant phenomenon and more like a presence you share a moment with. It moves gently, as though mindful not to disturb the stillness of the land. On remote coastlines, the experience is different but equally serene. The sea lies dark, absorbing the faint greens and violets overhead. Small waves roll in, each crest tinted softly by the shifting sky. The horizon disappears into a seamless gradient of water and light. You stand there alone, wrapped in the soft roar of the ocean and the drifting glow above, feeling the world expand and quiet around you. In mountain valleys, the lights rise behind tall silhouettes, unfolding like a curtain drawn across peaks. Snow gathers in deep folds along the slopes, glowing faintly as the aurora reflects off its surface. Every colour feels magnified, every movement feels clearer. And when the lights ripple quickly, casting shadows in unexpected directions, the mountains seem to breathe with them. What makes remote auroras so powerful is not their brightness or their rarity, but the way they heighten your awareness of solitude. You become conscious of your breath, your heartbeat, the cold pressing gently into your gloves. You feel the distance between you and the nearest human, not as loneliness, but as freedom, as quiet, as a kind of sacred pause in the flow of life. The aurora becomes a reminder that the world is vast and generous, and that moments of stillness are as important as moments of motion. To witness the aurora in isolation is to feel the earth in one of its purest states, silent, open, unobserved. The lights drift not for show, but as part of the planet's natural rhythm, and you, standing beneath them, become part of the landscape, part of the calm, part of the moment. As you rest tonight, picture yourself in such a place, alone but not lonely, quiet but not empty, held gently by the world. The sky glows above you, the land sleeps beneath you, and everything around you feels unhurried. In solitude, the aurora becomes a whisper, and in that whisper you find peace. In the coldest places on earth, the landscape does something extraordinary. It remembers the sky. For thousands of years, snow has fallen quietly across the Arctic and Antarctic, settling layer upon layer, compressing into ice that holds within it tiny traces of the world as it once was. Every winter storm, every quiet snowfall, every shift in the atmosphere leaves a subtle imprint, and hidden inside these frozen layers is the memory of auroras, not in the form of glowing colour, but as chemical fingerprints left behind by the same solar energy that brightens the night. Ice, frozen and silent, becomes a quiet archive of light. When the sun sends powerful waves of charged particles toward Earth, some of that energy affects the chemistry of the upper atmosphere. Nitrogen and oxygen molecules subtly transform, creating isotopes, special versions of atoms that drift down over time and settle onto the polar ice. Over centuries they become buried, trapped in tiny bubbles of ancient air. Scientists drill deep into this ice, pulling long cylinders from meters below the surface, and inside those frozen cores they find stories. Solar storms from hundreds of years ago, patterns of auroras long forgotten, traces of magnetic upheavals that once lit the sky. The ice remembers what the sky cannot speak. Imagine holding a piece of ice older than every story you've heard. Inside it lie signals from auroras that danced over the heads of early explorers, seals gliding beneath frozen seas, nomadic hunters moving across white horizons. Some of these ancient auroras would have been brighter than anything we see today. Vast red glows stretching across continents, green waves rising like curtains from horizon to horizon, and though no one alive witnessed them, the ice preserved their fingerprints, a soft echo of light drifting across centuries. Ice cores show us that auroras have followed the sun's rhythm faithfully. They reveal cycles of strong solar storms and gentle centuries, patterns of brightness and calm. There were times when the lights reached far south, glowing above skies where few people expected them. There were years when they dimmed, silent but still present, and through it all the ice quietly gathered the evidence, snowfall by snowfall, layer by layer. But the memory held in ice is not only scientific, it is poetic. It means that the world keeps traces of wonder, that beauty leaves imprints, that even light, which seems so fleeting, can carve its story into something solid and cold. The aurora is not just a moment that vanishes when the clouds drift in. It is a presence that shapes the earth in ways we rarely notice. When you stand on frozen ground beneath the northern lights, you stand above centuries of luminous memory. Deep below your feet lies ancient snow that once reflected auroras long faded. The glow you see now may one day be captured in a new layer of ice, waiting silently for future eyes to discover it. The sky expresses itself in colour. The earth stores that expression in frost. This connection between light and ice reminds us that beauty is never lost. It transforms, settles, buries itself gently and waits. The aurora you witness tonight may become part of a story told centuries from now, a quiet line in a frozen record, a trace of colour remembered long after the moment has passed. As you rest, imagine that slow preservation, snow falling softly in the Arctic night, a faint green glow drifting above, and deep beneath the surface, the earth keeping its promise to remember. Light becomes history, ice becomes memory, and the world in its quiet way holds on to wonder. When you look up at the aurora, you're not just seeing colour, you're seeing distance. Every shade in the northern lights is a message from a different height in the sky, a quiet signal from layers of atmosphere stacked like invisible floors. Green does not come from the same distance as red. Violet does not glow from the same altitude as blue. The aurora is not just one light, it is many lights layered gently above each other, drifting through space like luminous curtains hung at different depths. Imagine the sky as a soft, vertical landscape. At the lowest edges of the aurora, around 100 kilometers above the ground, nitrogen glows in quick flashes of deep blue and violet. These colors are born close to the world we know, close to mountain peaks, close to the cold upper winds, close to where airplanes sometimes fly. The light here is fast, sharp, fleeting. It appears in thin, energetic pulses that flicker before the eye can fully settle on them. A little higher, between 120 and 150 kilometers, the familiar green glow emerges. This is where oxygen releases its energy in a way we can easily see. Green is the colour most people imagine, the colour that sweeps across photographs and memories. It is steady, calm, and bright enough to drift across the entire sky. When people stand beneath a large auroral arc, it is usually this green that makes them feel as though the sky is folding gracefully toward them. And then, higher still, at altitudes where the air grows so thin it begins to blur into space, the rare red aurora forms. This light is slow, gentle, delicate. Oxygen atoms at these heights take their time releasing energy, creating crimson glows that linger like soft embers floating far above the world. These reds can stretch across vast distances, faint at first, then revealing themselves as subtle domes or rippling veils. They rarely flash, they drift. Because these layers sit at different altitudes, they sometimes overlap, creating gradients the eye interprets as blended colour. A tall green curtain may rise from the horizon, its top brushing into a thin violet fringe. A pale red cloud may hover above deeper green waves. On some nights, the sky becomes a vertical tapestry. Blue at the bottom, green in the middle, red at the top. Each colour speaking from a different distance, each telling its own quiet part of the story. The distance also changes how the colours move. Green waves ripple like slow water because they form lower in the atmosphere, where particles collide more often. Red glows shift like drifting thought, soft, wide, unhurried, because they form higher up, where air is almost absent. Violet edges flicker sharply, nearly invisible unless the aurora grows strong, and sometimes all three appear at once, creating a layered sky that feels impossibly deep. When you watch the aurora from the ground, your eyes merge these distances into a single scene. But if you could rise upward, gradually, gently, the colours would peel away one by one. You would ascend through the violet flickers, then through the green rivers, then finally into the red haze floating like a halo at the top of the world. Above that, the glow would dissolve into blackness, leaving only the faint whisper of particles moving silently through space. As you rest tonight, imagine these layers stacked above you, not flat but drifting in soft tiers, the blue and violet close to earth, the green flowing deeper, the red resting high above like a distant memory. A sky made of distances, of gentle altitudes, of quiet layers of light. The aurora is not just one colour. It is a vertical spectrum, a column of glow rising into space, like a cosmic candle burning in slow motion. Most people think of the aurora as a sudden arrival, something that appears without warning, dancing across the sky in unpredictable waves. But beneath that seeming spontaneity lies a quiet rhythm, a slow and steady pattern that resembles something deeply familiar, a tide. Not a tide of water, but a tide of light, a luminous ebb and flow shaped by the steady turning of the earth, the shifting orientation of magnetic fields, and the subtle rhythms of the solar wind drifting across space. Just as the ocean responds to the pull of the moon, the aurora responds to the gentle push of the sun's charged particles. When the flow of particles increases, even slightly, the aurora brightens. When the flow softens, the lights fade into the darkness, waiting patiently for the next rise. If you watch the sky long enough on a quiet winter night, you begin to sense this rhythm. The lights swell, then settle. They lift themselves upward, then curl inward. They return, then retreat, moving with a softness that feels almost tidal. Imagine standing on a snowy ridge, watching the horizon glow faintly in green. At first the light is low, a thin wave rippling like distant water. You wait, barely breathing, as the glow grows higher, brighter, wider. It rises slowly, the way a tide gathers strength before touching the shore. Then, without any sudden break, the light crests. It stretches overhead, forming arcs and bands that drift across the sky in long, graceful motions, and then, just as quietly, the tide begins to fall. The arcs soften, the colours thin. The glow pulls back toward the horizon, leaving the sky dark again, silent again, patient again, but you know it has not vanished. It is simply gathering itself for its next rise. The aurora listens to forces far beyond the world, and it follows them with a rhythm older than human memory. Scientists have observed this tidal behaviour in the patterns of the solar wind. Even when the sun is calm, Its output pulses gently, creating soft surges of energy that reach Earth in cycles. The magnetosphere, like a vast elastic shell, responds by adjusting its shape, tightening or loosening its boundaries. These subtle changes alter the flow of charged particles entering at the poles, and the aurora moves in sync with those shifts, swelling when the field opens, fading when it closes. The result is a natural breathing motion, a luminous inhale and exhale written across the sky. Sometimes the tide rises dramatically, a strong solar wave arrives, and the aurora erupts into powerful arcs and curtains, rising so quickly it takes your breath away. Other times the rise is soft and slow, barely noticeable until suddenly the sky is glowing again. Even the colours follow this motion. Violet and blue flicker in brief waves during energetic peaks, while green glows steadily through gentle tides. If you pay attention, you start to feel the pattern in your own body. Your breath slows to match the swell of the lights. Your thoughts drift like the receding glow. The night stretches open, unhurried, and the rhythm of the aurora becomes the rhythm of rest. As you lie down tonight, imagine the sky above you as a quiet ocean of colour. The horizon glows faintly. The lights rise like a soft tide climbing upward in slow, luminous waves. They crest across the stars, shimmering gently, then drift downward again, fading into calm darkness. A cycle without urgency, a motion without noise. The aurora does not simply appear, it rises, falls, and rises again, like the breath of the earth itself. And in that subtle tide, you find your own calm. There are nights in the far north when silence becomes so complete, so absolute that it feels almost like a presence, a soft companion settling gently across the world. On these nights, the wind rests, the trees stiffen into stillness, even the snow seems to stop its faint settling sounds, and above this vast quiet, the aurora drifts slowly into view, giving shape to the silence. In such moments, the lights do not just illuminate the sky, they colour the quiet itself. Silence is not an absence, it is a texture. It has depth, tone, weight. When the aurora appears in perfect stillness, that texture takes on a glow that feels both fragile and immense. You stand in a world without movement, without noise, without hurry, and above you soft green waves begin to rise, their motion so gentle it feels like the sky itself is breathing in slow, luminous intervals. Imagine standing on untouched snow beneath a dome of stars. The cold is crisp enough that each inhale feels clean and precise. The world is so silent you can hear the faint hum of your own thoughts. Then, at the edge of the horizon, a pale light blooms. It stretches upward like a whisper unfolding into colour. The silence deepens. Every ripple of the aurora seems to soften the stillness around you. The green glow settles onto the land, giving shape to shadows that weren't visible before. The snow reflects it faintly, creating a soft echo of colour beneath your feet. The world becomes a gradient. Darkness above, brightness in the centre, and a muted glow near the ground. The quiet becomes layered, just like the light. The aurora's movement only enhances this silence. Slow waves drift like long exhalations. Curtains sway in gentle arcs. Sometimes a faint violet edge appears, shimmering like breath caught in cold air. There is no sound, or perhaps the sound is so subtle that only the earth can hear it. People in the far north have long spoken of hearing the aurora's faint crackle or whisper, but whether real or imagined, the idea captures the feeling perfectly. The lights seem alive in the silence. When the aurora grows brighter, the quiet does not break, it expands. The sky fills with motion, yet nothing disturbs the stillness. It is as though the aurora moves within the silence instead of pushing against it. The world holds its breath, and the lights travel through that breath, colouring the space between stars with hues that feel both ancient and tender. In rare moments, when the aurora pulses rapidly, the silence seems to pulse with it. The night takes on a rhythm, a heartbeat so slow that it feels almost outside of time. The sky flickers softly, and the quiet responds, deepening and widening, as if the land itself is listening. There's a kind of comfort only such silence can bring. It invites you inward toward a place where thought becomes gentle and time stretches without pressure. The aurora does not break this introspection, it illuminates it. The glow becomes a mirror for the stillness within you, a calm presence reflecting another calm presence. As you rest tonight, imagine this serene world, a night where the air is motionless, the snow is silent, the stars are steady, and the aurora moves slowly across the sky like a soft melody without sound. Imagine the quiet taking on a colour, cool, gentle, glowing, wrapping around you in a peaceful hush. Some nights, silence has a colour, and under the aurora that colour is green. The northern lights, for all their drifting colour and silent motion, hold a kind of gentleness that feels almost designed for rest. Even when they brighten the entire sky, their glow never overwhelms. Even when they move with surprising speed, their rhythm never startles. The aurora is a presence that invites you inward, not with urgency, but with a soft pull, a quiet encouragement to pause, breathe, and simply be. After journeying through its science, its stories, its history, and its mysteries, we arrive at something deeper, the aurora as a companion to rest. Imagine yourself on a final night beneath the lights. The world is wrapped in cold, but you are warm inside your coat. Snow stretches outward in smooth, untouched layers. The air carries no sound except your breath rising in slow, visible clouds. Above you, the sky begins its familiar glow, a pale green at first, then stronger, rising like a thought becoming clear. You feel no need to think about what creates the aurora, no need to trace magnetic lines or solar winds. You simply let the light pour into your eyes the way calm pours into a tired heart. This is the gift of the aurora, its ability to quiet the mind without silencing wonder. As the lights ripple, they guide your attention away from the noise of daily life. The deadlines, the worries, the unfinished tasks drift outward, like shadows moving beyond the horizon. You feel yourself returning to a slower rhythm, the rhythm you sometimes forget you're allowed to keep. The aurora reminds you that stillness is not an interruption of life, but part of it, a necessary breath, a soft exhale, a moment of renewal. In this moment, the sky holds you the way a quiet room holds someone who has finally set their burdens down. Look upward. The green arcs curve gently above you, smooth and unhurried. A violet edge flickers briefly like a shy smile. The stars remain steady in the background, anchoring the sky, and the aurora, slow and luminous, shaping the darkness into something peaceful. You begin to feel smaller, not in a diminishing way, but in a comforting way. The world expands above you, spacious and calm, and your thoughts soften to match its pace. There is room to breathe, room to let the mind wander softly, room to drift slowly toward rest. Many people describe the aurora as a dream unfolding across the sky. Others say it feels like a curtain revealing infinity. But on nights like this, quiet, still, deeply serene, the aurora becomes something simpler and more intimate, a lullaby made of light, not singing, not speaking, but glowing with a warmth that your body understands even if your mind cannot explain it. You feel the heaviness in your eyes, the slow ease in your shoulders, the breath that deepens without effort. The glow above you moves like a slow wave, and your thoughts begin to move with it, drifting, settling, loosening their grip. And as the lights continue their gentle flow, You sense the world around you fading into softness. The night holds you, the sky soothes you, and the aurora, that ancient flowing ribbon, becomes the last thing you see before sleep approaches. Let it guide you. Let it quiet you. Let it help you drift. Because the aurora is not just a phenomenon of science or a marvel of nature. It is a reminder that even in darkness the world offers beauty, and even in stillness the universe continues to glow. Everything flows. Sleep in that motion.